Am I live? Am I live? I think so. You never know with this new live streaming software. Hey, what's up, Scott Balker with Imagination Creation Films, and today it is Friday, February 21st, 2025. I have to continuously get that into my head because I don't know why I don't even write dates down anymore. I just kind of, that's the date. It is what it is. But today, it's a special day. Why? It's Friday, and everybody likes Fridays. But also, it's special because we have a special guest again. And I love bringing on special guests. They're always a lot of fun. They're always useful and knowledgeable and helpful to everybody. And, well, we like to be that way. So we have Ryan Avery with Tokina Cinema USA, and he's joining us. So I'm going to bring him in here, let him do a quick little introduction, and then we're going to get started. So you feel free, everyone, just ask questions, and we're gonna make this thing happen. Hi, Ryan.
Hey, Scott.
Tell us, give everybody a little brief background, who you are, who you work for, all the good stuff, and let's get going.
I do a lot of different things, but my primary day job is working for Kenko Tokina USA for their Tokina Cinema division. I'm the vice president of sales, and I've been heavily involved in the initial concept design and total market presence of the Tokina Vista primes, which have been extremely successful. And I also do product development for other lenses that Tokina has, and filters and custom filters, and the list goes on and on.
Very cool. And Tokina has been. I mean, you might start with a brief history of Tokina's hidden world, and then how they kind of became kind of the premier brand that they always were, but now they're out in front. So, let me talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. Tokina, actually, there's some fun stories there. Tokina has been around since the 1950s. Shortly after World War II, they started manufacturing various lens optics, and they were always known as a budget brand, basically, like a precision Japanese budget brand. And they maintained that image for quite a long time, and some people still have that image of the brand, actually. But they were manufacturing like Sears brand, so they've always been like an OEM type manufacturer. So a lot of the old Soligor and Sears lenses and stuff like that, if it was under any given name, it was probably manufactured by Tokina back in the day. And then in 1972, they decided to get into the photo lens market under their own brand. And it was either 71 or 72. And there used to be a trade show called Photokina in Germany. I don't know if you remember that one. That was a big trade show. And it used to be, I think in the peak in the 80s, it was like a couple 100,000 people or more. It was a big deal. And so they went to that show and they needed a name brand and they couldn't come up with one. And so they came up with Tokina, which stands for Photokina, but they locked off the photo part or the faux part. So that's how the word Tokina came around. Was somebody in marketing in the 70s decided to call it Tokina lenses for Photokina. So interesting bit of history there.
So when did Tokina Cinema come around? What?
Well, yeah. So Tokina was in the photo business, and they had like There's a lot of people like to talk about their the ingenue cooperation with their zoom, their short zoom. So they've always been kind of tangentially connected to cinema in one way or another. And but finally, in 2014, they decided to enter the cinema market, and how they did was Duclos Lenses was modifying the 11 to 16 lens photo lens for PL mount. And then Tokina saw that and they said, well, we can do that too, and we'll just do it as a factory mod. And so they did that. Um, and so they were in that market. It was around a little bit after that time that they approached me. I was not working for the company at the time, but they approached me and said, we're planning a series of lenses. And so I told them kind of what it should be as far as the future. And I really felt that large format sensors, really big sensors were coming. And you got to remember at this time, Red did not have their large VistaVision sensor yet. In fact, really nobody did. And so, other than in still photo, so the idea was super fast lenses and very, very high resolution, uh, nearly zero focus breathing, change in image size when you focus. And from a technical standpoint, the Vista Primes actually have less breathing than a Master Prime. And Zeiss Master Primes are always put up there as the one that has the least amount of breathing. So they actually have less than that. But Tokina had a serious brand issue because people thought of them as inexpensive photo lenses, and they're entering the market. You know, they had their 11 to 20 and their 50 to 135 photo lenses that they had reskinned, but they were just photo lenses reskinned. So the Vistas were a completely different project. The intention was high-end cinema to compete on the low end of the high end, if you will. And so we brought together a very unique set of features, which I can get into, but the lens designer that designs these is an absolute rock star and really knows what he's doing, and he's been behind a lot of lenses out there. So yeah, so the cinema line is relatively new to the company in terms of its history. And it's certainly been extremely successful. And I told Tokino when we joined, they said, "How long before we're, a recognized brand in cinema?" And I said, "Give it about 50 years because you're up against 100-year competitors." And we did it in 10. So over the last 10 years, we have quickly become, and I think people really don't understand the level of usage of the Vista Primes in Hollywood. I really think people don't understand that at all. The list of films is a mile long, and it's like almost everything modern. Uh, Even if they're using other spherical lenses or anamorphic lenses, they'll use the Vista Primes for VFX. So, yeah, that's a lot to say, but that's kind of where we are. We've landed on there.
Two questions for you to help kind of how we want to stage this live. Do you want to go through the newest lenses and kind of work backwards in how you talk about them, or do you want to start with the older lenses and work forwards? Would be question number one, and then number two, how do you want to handle questions that come in? Do you want to answer them as they come in, or do you want to kind of group them together if I can, or how would you like to do it?
We can just do it as it, kind of popcorns up. I
Yeah.
would say, just stop me. Feel free to stop me. But 'cause Lord knows people love to talk, so myself included. So yeah, so the Vistas, we started with the Vista Primes, which, like I said,
Mhm.
are the basic concept of them is a very large image circle. They actually cover 65 millimeter open gate on Airy. They certainly cover the new Blackmagic from the focal lengths of 35 millimeter and up, and I can
And that is
explain why.
a topic we want to talk about right there. And you were kind of educating me on that. I completely glossed over it in reality, which was image circle versus what do you call it, light.
There's
Lost my train.
definition and there's illumination, and those are two completely different things. So the we'll get back to the rest of the features on the Vistas later that makes them special. But speaking about image circles, essentially we have no formats whatsoever. Like the industry is just a hot mess. I mean, if you look at Phil Holland's sensor
Yeah,
chart,
there's
it's like
so many charts.
a
It's
map of
crazy.
Disneyland. There's like all kinds of intersecting squares, and you're like, wait a minute, what year is it, and all
And
that.
we're running out of color. He's got
So
to go to 12-bit color just on his chart.
I know. Yeah, we're gonna have to drag our mouse over the CIE to find find
For
the
groups.
format. Yeah. Anyway, I saw a comment. Hello to Dirk
Oh, yep.
and Brandon.
Hey, Dirk.
So basically, image circles. So there's all these different formats, and we have the I won't get into the whole history of it, but we got like super small formats in digital land like Micro Four Thirds or Super 16, really tiny formats, and then you can design a lens for a given format, and so we go all the way up to 65 mil. And the new Blackmagic 17K and the Fuji Xterna and all those are kind of less than 65 mil. Um, so, so that's kind of the coverage situation. And so there are very few lenses that actually truly cover 65 mil format. You're basically looking at custom Panavision lenses for IMAX and stuff like that, and then stuff that Avery Rental designs for their lenses. But essentially, you have two uh, types of image circle, and that's the light circle that it projects out. And so you have definition, which is the format that it's designed for. So that's going to mean that the edges of the image are as the designer intended them, either sharp and flat or sloping off, in the case of like a Cook lens or something like that, which I can talk about roll off later. But basically, the light circle, and a lot of people know this, it's probably boring everybody, but the light circle is the amount of light that the lens is casting, and as you get to the edge, it starts the vignette. And so we didn't used to see this because you were just shooting full frame lenses for film, or you were shooting Super 35, and it wasn't even noticed. Now, if you worked at a rental company or a lens service place, you could put on a lens projector, project light on the wall with the target, and then see the real coverage of it, which I've done a lot of. In fact, I think I've projected most of the lenses out there. I've spent dozens, if not hundreds of hours projecting lenses to look at them. It's part of what we do with design. But basically, the light circle has become more apparent. And so like when you use like a classic example, which we'll reference back to several times, is the Helios 44, right, with spherical distortion. And people are shooting that outside the intended format. And a classic example of lenses that do not perform well outside of the intended format is the Leica Summilux C. That actually has a patent on it, and basically it's like a zoom lens, sort of the way it focuses. So you have the two groups working against each other to create less focus breathing, which is patented by the man that designed it. But when you use it outside the format, you've got this funky, weird zooming going on. So that's a lens you can't use, even though the image circle is the light circle is bigger. So the Vista primes, they have an area of definition of 46.7. That is the exact diagonal of Red's VistaVision sensor, and more or less the Avery LF. It's a little different, but that's what it's designed for, and it's designed to be crispy sharp at those edges in that image circle. And it actually has a what we call a mustache distortion. So it actually is designed, and it's really cool, as a design feature we intentionally put in, where the image kind of snaps back in sharp at Super 35, and then it kind of goes out a little bit and comes back in sharp at VistaVision. So you're able to, it's truly a dual format lens. And there's a lot to say about dual format lenses, but anyway, that's the idea. And then the light circle is much, much bigger. So the longer the focal length you have on a lens, a wide angle lens, the light circle will be very, very close to the actual format it covers. And then as you get longer, the image circle gets bigger. And so on the Vista primes, the 35 millimeter fully covers Alexa 65 open gate. And like the 29 and the 25 will cover some smaller formats. That are still considered large format. So
Interesting. Let's get Brandon's question in here, then I want you to go back to your Vista Prime so you can go through that. In a landscape of cheaper overseas cinema lenses, what really is a big downfall that these cinema lenses have over a lens design like Vista Primes?
well, it's generally what it is, and people, this goes back to the complaint that the Vista primes are really big and heavy. And they are. They're big lenses. They're not as big as some, but they are big. And what it really comes down to is a lot of them are based off of photo lenses, photo lens designs, and photo lenses are not really intended to, or they're intended, they can be used anyway, of course, and they have applications, but in terms of things that make a cinema lens. So it's not just a gear. It's how it behaves when you focus, whether it breathes a lot or not. And generally, the smaller and more compact the design, the less image character you're going to get, which I can talk about the vintaging of these other lenses as well. Now, people may or may not remember, I founded a company called Vedra Lens Company in 2014. We were the first mirrorless cinema prime lens out there, and we took essentially a design that was less prone to breathing, and we brought that in to be a cinema lens rather than just putting a gear on a photo lens. So it's really, you're talking about depth of the image, some things that are almost kind of not imperceivable, but you just can't quite put your finger on it, which I can explain what that is. But basically, it has to do with fall off, how it separates the subject from the background, how it transitions into that, stuff like that. So I really believe that a lot of budget cinema lenses are quite good. They're fine. They're great. I'm not here to talk you out of that. It's just if you're looking for things that have to do with overall image quality, focus, breathing, distortion, how it handles the transitions, um, things like that, that will greatly improve the image. That's really the difference there.
Okay.
I don't know if that
Go
answered it
ahead.
or not.
Yeah, it does. He has a follow up, but I want you to go back into your Vista Primes and talk about the the creation of those you were talking about.
Yeah, so the concept, the design goal was to create something that was super fast with minimal breathing that covered these large formats that didn't even really exist yet. Although I had a very strong indication that that was the direction it was going. So that's kind of why we jumped on that early. And in 2016, we showed up at the National Association of Broadcaster, an AB show, and it was kind of like showing up to a party early, just standing around with your drink in your hand, going, "Where is everybody? What's going on?" Because the next year it was bananas. Like everybody got it. We were one of the only lenses that covered that format. And that's going to continue to be true. Like, you just can't get a physical size lens with a big enough image circle that really creates a high quality image without going on a large footprint lens. So even though there are lenses that claim that they cover some of these formats, and they do, and you're talking about definition versus image circle, or versus illumination circle, is a completely different thing. So there actually is, the Vistas are sitting already in pretty rarefied air already, and there are very few lenses that are out there. And if they do, they tend to be large format conversions, um, which is fine as well. You're seeing a lot of that trend with the Mamiya lenses and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So,
So you've created the Vista Primes, and it took a little bit, and then everybody got it. And then what started happening, and I guess shows that you can talk about it, or features and such that were shot with them, and then feedback, and then from there you went, I believe, to Vista Ones as just a slight little fun little release, and then you started, I guess, getting more serious about modifying. So if you want to kind of go through a little bit of that, and
yeah, so to back it up a little bit, another design feature of the Vistas is that they have a fragile wavefront, which means that they can be pushed and pulled. The optical design can be pushed and pulled with various modifiers, and it doesn't totally fall apart. And what I mean by fall apart is you'll see a lot of, quote unquote vintage changes to existing lenses that are based on photo lenses. And once you do that, it really starts to look like garbage because the contrast drops too much. There's not enough definition, stuff like that. So the Vista Primes are able to do that, and that's another reason that they are so popular in there. So we started having rental companies purchase them and modify them themselves by adding gaps to between elements to create spherical distortion, which I can talk about distortion and the different types because it plays directly into a quote unquote vintage look. But basically, the Vista 1 was, people were saying, I like the Vista, but I don't like the green flare. That's always the number one thing. All these modern lenses, they need a green flare specifically for light transmission purposes, whether they're 2.8 or 1.5. And also the glass types that we used in the older lenses were based off of lead. And so you just can't get that stuff anymore, nor should you. So I'm sure in fact, I know there's some dark corners of the planet where they still make lead-based optics, but it's nowhere around us. Certainly not in Japan, where these are made. So yeah, people didn't like that. So we did for NAB 2019, we did a Vista 1, which had a gray color barrel with blue accents on it, and it had a single coated front element. And actually, that's not true. It wasn't single coated. It was coated differently on the back versus the front. So the convex side had a different coating than the concave side, and that created kind of a bluish color flare as the primary flare. And when you look at a lens, a good way to do it is to evaluate the flares is to shine a big, like a 150 or a 300 Fresnel kind of down the barrel, and then just kind of pan your camera around. And you can actually see all of the lens elements projected onto the image. And if you did that, you'd see it's all green, and then there's one blue one up front. Um,
interesting.
and then the pandemic happened, and nobody bought them for a little while. Nobody bought anything, and then they got popular. They discontinued them after that, and they got popular after that. So they're no longer a product offered by Tokina. Um, so
Interesting. Um, question from Brandon follow up. Are a lot of those overseas lenses using leased lens designs? Feels like they're all coming out of nowhere.
There's not some lens design. There's only so many places you can go, and so you're affecting some primary areas of distortion and flare and all the things we look for in a lens resolution. So there isn't really any licensing going on because there's not a lot of patents, and if they do have patents, it's specifically to exclude everybody else. But generally, you can work around it. So there's a lot of workarounds. All of these optics are coming from talented optical designers at various companies, and we've seen an increase in those from China, which is an interesting point of view for the industry, good and bad, I think, depending on your point of view. But I think it's all good. So no, these guys are designing and manufacturing their own. There's a lot of photo lenses that they're putting gears on, which I would call lipstick on the pig. It's just like, okay, here's a photo lens. Let's make it look like it has cinema lens. It's like, no, not quite.
Right, right.
So there's a lot of that going on. But yeah, the manufacturers, the Chinese manufacturers, they're designing their own stuff. They're making their own stuff, and they're doing a good job of it. It's a different level of image quality, and it's a different level of performance on different sensor sizes. There's a lot that goes into it. But yeah, if you own a single camera and you shoot all the time and you put on a lens and you like it, great, go for it. Certainly the Vista Primes are not going to be something you're going to haul on everything. They're big lenses.
Is there like a optics design software that like people can use and like literally not us but like designers that they plug in what they want and it generates that? And is if so, is that something that like became cheaper and that's why China is able to design them so fast and such, or what would you say
No, I
is an
think
example?
there's a couple of them, but ZMAX is primarily the one. ZEMAX. That's the one that is primarily used. It's relatively easy to play with, actually, and but to design a lens that anybody could, I think anybody with enough time could sit there and figure out ZMAX and design this lens that in theory is wonderful, but the cost of manufacturing it, that's where the expertise comes in and the ability to make it, and that is what the Chinese lens manufacturers have been exceptionally good at, is taking designs and making them manufacturable on a wide scale. Um, so yeah.
Be like the repeatability, you mean, like the consistency across the board? 'Cause-
Well, you can design a really great lens that weighs, 400 pounds and covers Super 16, and it's going to cost, $500,000 to make one of them. Or you could, design something that you can manufacture for $500, and so that's kind of what's happened in China, primarily, as well as some other countries.
okay, so Vista Primes are out, and then Vista Ones short lived, and then Vista Ps came out. What was the Vista P? What differentiated it from before?
So to get in past Vista 1, or even with Vista 1, we have to talk about what makes an image altered or what makes it vintage in a sense. Everybody's throwing around, including manufacturers, like, oh, it's the vintage look. I've tried very hard to come up with acronyms that aren't vintage, but, unsuccessfully so. But, but the look of a vintage lens, if you think about it, we're talking about inefficient glass. We're talking about lenses that don't transmit as much light. They possibly do funky things with light rays that don't refocus on the sensor, such as chromatic aberration. But what you're looking at is fundamentally you're looking at generally a warmer coating, because that's what those lead-based coatings did. And also you're talking about a drop in contrast. And there's multiple ways to look at that, but veiling glare is primarily the term where it's just creating a cast of kind of like, looks like log, right? Like over your image, dropping the overall contrast. So you're looking at contrast, you're looking at coating colors, and then also you're looking at, depending on the age, spherical designs where there are no spheric elements. So spherical elements are perfectly like a sphere, right? A half sphere. And uh, uh, spheric elements they're spherical, then they go flat at the edge, and the reason for that is correcting the optics. So older lenses, you tend to see you were starting to image more of that spherical without correcting at the edges, and what that looks like If you use it inside of the intended format, is it just gives a little bit of a not so much swirly effect, kind of like that, where it's like if you're looking through the edges of a port window or something, it distorts it a little bit.
Right, right.
So that's the look that's why people love Coke Speed Pancros. That's why they love some of the K35s, and although that's more flare driven look, but yeah, that's kind of the idea, is that you've got flare color, you've got contrast, and reduced resolution, which enables kind of like a diffusion filter of sorts that cuts down on fine detail resolution, because it's just not resolving that. So those are the things. So with Vista 1, our goal was to take that flare component and kick that in there to do that. Vista P, what we did was, if you take the elements, and a lot of rental companies have done this quite simply, if you pop the back off of Vista Prime on the mount, you can put some little shims in there, and you take the spacing elements and you move them out. Now, if you have lenses that are designed for spherical, for a certain edge crispiness, if you've got that and then you push it apart, well, what are you doing? You're imaging more of the edge of the elements. And so it creates spherical distortion. So spherical distortion is that swirly kind of bokeh look. And that's exactly what we did with Vista P. The only reason that Tokina made Vista P is because multiple rental companies and customers were saying, I'd really like a Tokina Vista with air gaps, as we call it, where you spaced out the elements, but I don't want to do it myself, and I don't want to pay a premium for somebody that's modifying them already. Because there are companies that have popped up that modify the Vistas, and that's essentially what's happening there. So some key differences, and certainly mechanical upgrades and other things going on with more expensive options. But primarily that's the only reason we came out with Vista P. So you're targeting spherical distortion there.
And then, I mean, we're kind of glossing over things, but just try to get the initial information out there to spur questions on what people might ask. So now we have Vista C, and what did Vista C do? And if you have, oh, hello, Vista C.
There it is. Yeah. You can even see the front element is like red and blue. So Vista C, what it was a this goes back about 6 years. We were continuing to see requests for modification of the Vistas, and we realized that the air gap thing we did with the Vista P, and that a lot of other companies were doing, really that was like the simplest thing that you could do. And what people were actually wanting is, they were talking about spherical distortion, but actually what they were after was more fall off, which is how the lens transitions from the center to the edge. And lenses that are very, very good at fall off is Cook lenses have wonderful fall off. They roll gently. And that's really a function of the spacing of the elements, as well as the transition of resolution from edge to center. So that's really what we were after. People were after. So I talked to a lot of DPs. I talked to a lot of rental companies. I'm not going to say every rental company in the world, but probably close to it. And like, just to find out what it was they were looking for, and ask them, what's hot? What do people really want? What are they renting? And what are they renting once? And then what are they renting again, to see, because a lot of times that'll tell you, like the production originally went with Coke Speed Pancros, and then it drove them nuts. So they went with, some other lens. So basically then, I was able to pull data on what was actually being rented for various music videos, productions, this sort of thing. So what lenses are actually being rented? And then we looked at the actual footage, if we could, from those scenes, to figure out what the look actually driven and what they liked about it and how the DP used it. And then out of all of that, we were able to, and significant input from rental companies, we were able to create the Vista C. So Vista C is a complete reboot of all of the coatings. That is something that no third-party company could do. We did, these are not a lazy modification of, because the Vista P arguably is a fairly, it was custom demand, but really we're just adding some shims. A lot of them that no rental company could do, but still not there. So what we were after with Vista C was, we modeled it after two vintage lenses specifically. So we took our elements and completely replaced a handful of elements in there. So there are very few lens elements that the Vistas actually have. Vista C actually has in common with the other focal lengths. And we changed the coating completely through, including in sealed groups. So it is a red and blue flare, which the flare was intentionally modeled after the K35. And I know a lot of there have been companies, Canon, tried to make an analogy of their Sumi Ray lenses to K35s, which it definitely was not. It had a green flare. So there were a number of things that we were targeting, and we were able to do all of it. So the fall off very, very closely matches what you love about a Cook lens, the older ones like the Speed Pancro. The flare is what people want to see in a K35 type flare, and the image coverage is 65 mil on some of the longer 35 and up. T1.5, which I really pity the focus puller that even has to deal with T1.5 on an Alexa 65. I don't think that's a thing, but its potential is there for complete disaster because that's like a gnat's eyelash. So, but this is all related to Vista C. So, yeah.
To answer that question there, Brandon, it's Vista C's we're talking about, which is the latest one that were just announced this week. Is that right? Or
Yeah,
last week?
yeah. Mm-hmm. Last week, yeah, we did it. We announced it for BSC Expo in London, which I was able to attend, and the response was incredible. I could not believe the number of people. Honestly, I mean, we all know we've been going through a very difficult time in this industry, arguably probably one of the most difficult times we've had. I lived through the last writer strike in 2007, and so I'm aware of how it goes, and this is much worse. So, like right now, it's no secret that a lot of us aren't getting work. A lot of us, and certainly by extension, rental companies, which the Vista C is price-wise targeted towards, those lenses are. I lost my train of thought. Sorry.
The industry and
Oh yeah. So I was totally shocked at the pricing because these are 10 to 13,000 US lenses, right? I thought there's no way anybody's going to really be interested at this point because it's like nobody has any money. Everybody came out of the woodwork at BSC and was like, I got to have that. Because once they saw it, they were like, this is exactly what we've been waiting for with the Vistas. So it's a pleasant surprise.
and if you line up Vista, Vista One, Vista P, and Vista C side by side, well, just visually, and you mention one thing that would describe the difference between them, like if what one thing would you look for that would tell you, oh, that's a Vista C, vice versa. Basically, what's the big visual change that was immediate to most people?
Two things. One is flare color. That's going to be the automatic one
Yep.
that you're going to see.
Green to blue gives you the Vista One, and then yeah.
Yeah, and then secondarily, the fall off from center of frame. So if you with the Vista C, if you did like a two shot at the edges of the frame, they one of the actors wouldn't necessarily be completely sharp because it's an intention to have it roll off pretty heavy. And you can see that in the launch video where we have a lot of images where you see like the rendering of the bokeh and the rendering of the model's hair from center to knot is quite pretty significant difference.
Brandon, if you do borrow the 102,000, use my affiliate link, please.
Yeah,
That'd be a nice one.
we have financing.
Easy financing. On, I think, let's kind of go through a bunch of different talking points that people love to do since I have a real optical guy here. 3D pop. What is it really? What do people think it is? What generates it? How do you determine it? Give us a full explanation that you can with 3D pop, because I hear 5,000 different things, and I think every single one of them I was wrong on. So,
Well, maybe I'll give the wrong.
I mean,
Wrong answer.
you can't be worse than me. I'm batting zero.
Yeah, it's. I'm trying to think of some. Well, we'll stay out of politics, but I'm trying to think of some political equivalent of like nobody knows. Like,
I don't know.
yeah. So, I guess really what you're looking at is you can just boil it down to what I was talking about earlier, which are the basics of an optical design, right? So you've got distortion, you have resolution, contrast, and all these things are kind of connected. But you're really talking about distortion, and we're not talking about spherical distortion at the edges. We're talking about the subtle things that when you stack multiple spherical and aspherical elements, there's different portions of the frame that kind of go in and out subtly. And the more of that transition you can make to where your distortion is significantly different at the edges than the middle or somewhere in between, that's kind of that pop. So one thing that people love about Sigma lenses and the Zeiss, previously the Zeiss CP2, 3, nano, these types of no, nano's not fair, but the photo lenses, the other ones, the CP series, that were basically their photo lenses and a gear housing. When you do that, really what you're seeing is you're seeing this very sharp transition because the elements are very close together. It's designed for photo, so the elements are small. You don't need a lot of transition there in a photograph. And so what you see is this very like cutout kind of look. And so if the lens is high enough contrast combined with a very compressed distortion, so there's not a lot of separation there, maybe that's what you're saying by pop. If you're talking about the way that a subject stands out versus the background, again, it's all dealing with distortion, which there's a connection between contrast, apparent resolution, because you're talking about edge details. So if it's really good at defining the edge details, that'll make it stand out. So
I mean,
I don't know if that
3D
answers it.
pop. I mean, I had only ever heard 3D pop from Cook Pencrose, and basically was where I think the term came from, and then somehow it got magnified onto every possible lens. Oh, this lens has 3D pop. This lens doesn't, and I, yeah, I'm kind of lost at the how one could be and could not be, and what to look for, because I was figuring roll off would have a huge play in that. But
Yeah, it's the fall off. It's the distortion in the way that the lens behaves from subject to background, and that has to do with the spacing of the elements, the way that it handles that distortion, the corrections that the optical designer makes. Like I said, with the Vista Primes, we very intentionally made it so that it's sharp in the corners at VistaVision and also sharp in the corners at Super 35. So you got kind of this rolling distortion that goes out, and and really that's what Cook was doing, rightfully so. Because if you take a lens and you project it on a white, if you shoot a white like slide, the slide viewers,
mm-hmm.
a white background, you backlit, you put them up there. That's how we test coverage on lenses. CVP in the UK, they have a very good tool on their website that shows coverage on a white background, and you can see how much it falls off. So like a Vista Prime inside of the intended format is totally flat. Like there's no difference in exposure between edges and the center in the intended format. And if you put the same Cook lens on there, it's going to look like you're shining a flashlight on there. It's going to be really dark in the corners, or relatively dark, depending on the design, of course, like the S8 and other modern ones know. But that's what Cook is talking about. They're talking about that transition, or we call it fall off. So that's the term 3D pop, and generally you're going to find that in older lenses because of the way that the spherical elements kind of just rolled off into the edges of the format. So yeah.
Kevin had a question. Are the Vista C's the same weight as the OG Vista Primes?
More or less. We changed the shape, the coating or the element shape on quite a few. So, tenths of a gram maybe, but yeah, it's basically the same. It's the same. The retainers are the things that hold the elements in place are basically the same. It's just the spacing of the elements and the shape of them are completely different, which renders a completely different look. So.
And then they're asking about are these Vista C's out now or coming out, or what is the timeline
They
on those?
are shipping. There's a limited quantity shipping at the end of March, and I double check. I think those are all sold out. Pretty sure they are, but we have another production coming in the summer, which should coincide nicely with the signs of return that we're seeing on the high end. Because remember, these lenses are very specifically targeted to be the
Rental.
value priced high end option. These lenses get compared directly to signature primes, and everything down from there. So yeah, so that's
Let's see here. Luca, I've seen some tests from Shane, and yes, Cook shows that background is pushed far from the subject. And I find
Basically, yeah, go ahead. No,
no,
that's it.
no, I refuse.
Distortion. I'm just saying that's what that is. I mean, it's marketing terms for distortion. I am fairly confident that I coined the term identical iris and focus gear position in this industry. I started doing that in 2014 with Vedra, and after that, slowly now everybody talks about it when they launch a series of lenses. They're like, the focus gear and iris are in the same spot.
That is
So I think
interesting.
it's yeah, they're
Good
just
point.
marketing terms. They're marketing terms, and the reality is like, yeah, well, most lenses have that already. But so it's just a marketing term, and they're right. I mean, it's a beautiful look. Is it the only place you can get that look? Despite what Cook would have you believe, no, you can get it. And the Vista Cs are definitely in that range of type of look.
Is there this is more of a generic optical question. Is there a way, or let's say you wanted to create a lens that could have three different looks? Is there a way to design a lens that, like you talk about the air gaps, that you could release some screws and turn something and it creates the air gap, but then you could turn it right back, and or the distortion you could move an element slightly so that a user could do it. Is that possible or very unfeasible?
Well, air gapping the lens inside. So Ingenue, when you open up their lenses, and Vistas also have this feature. Well, all the lenses have a feature where the rear A sphere, the modern lenses, the rear spherical element needs to be adjusted, and we call that centering. So, like if you put a projector lens or you take a picture of a newspaper taped flat to a wall, one way you can test your lens is does the focus look a little shifted, and that's
Right.
image centering. And basically, there's usually one element near the rear that's an spherical element that you kind of pitch around on three different axes to get it to, or two axes to get it to come in on all corners where it's supposed to be. So Ingenue has inside their lenses a little screwdriver you can put in there, and it just kind of pushes the element around to center it. Now, in theory, you could do the same thing where you would have some type of theoretical worm drive inside of it and move different elements around. Um, but generally, you're limited more by the actual total optical design, which goes back to the reason that Vistas have been so popular for multiple applications from VFX all the way up to like fine art stuff, is because you have that real estate to do that. So yeah, it is entirely possible to do that. I've seen that idea floated multiple times. I've heard of some projects going on that I don't think ever happened, probably for a good reason. But yeah, it is entirely possible to do that. But really, you would have issues with really establishing your front and rear elements, which really those would have to be fixed. And that really puts you into a very narrow channel of optical design, which tends not to lend itself to modifications in such a way. So yes,
Gotcha.
in theory, yes. But what you would be doing though is you're just changing the spacing of the elements, right? And you could switch out some stuff like we saw it with the Vista One and with other modifications where people have taken some sandpaper and rubbed off some elements and put it back in the lens. And like you can see some drop, but you're still those sealed groups. You would have to change entire groups and a front element, at which point it's a whole other lens if you want to change flare
Right.
color. And so with the spacing, you're seeing spherical distortion, but that's creating what we think is fall off, but it's actually just rounding your edges and making the edges a little more blurry. Whereas with the Vista C and the Cooks, it's a completely different thing. The elements are intentionally rolling off to create that gentle, subtle distortion change, which is what people like.
All right. Very good. Let's see here. Civil lenses seem to be moving into autofocusing world. Will this cause limitations to cinema lenses?
Um, the Yeah, yes and no. The problem with autofocus, and not really a problem, but autofocus obviously comes from photo, and with that, what you're seeing lenses that travel a very short distance. So the focus throw from we've all got them, those cheap little lenses. It's 20 millimeters of travel. I don't even know. The degrees are like, it depends on the size of the lens, obviously, but the degree of rotation from 0 to 360 is 20, 30, 40 degrees. And the reason is because the optics have to change very quickly. And so with cinema lenses, not everybody does the rack type shot, so it really depends on what you're doing. But if you're going to do a focus pull, then you want a lot of time to go by, a lot of rotation. Is my audio glitching?
Well, I don't know
Let me
if
see.
it's just mine or if it's everyone. Okay, it's not you, so it is glitching. It's pretty glitchy.
Okay,
Okay,
hang on.
okay,
Let me
so
switch out.
that's fine. It's like you can try. Let's
Is that
see.
better?
Yeah, well, we'll listen and see. It would just happen periodically when you're talking, and it's just kind of weird.
It's these AirPods that are been giving me
Ah,
problems. Sorry about that.
very good. Fair enough.
So
You were
yeah, I don't remember what we were talking about.
sorry. Autofocus in cinema lenses, and you were talking about.
Okay, I don't know. Oh yeah, so basically you have to have very short travel distance, and with cinema you're kind of working the opposite direction. So there has to be some balance, and that tends to come with motorization, right? Obviously, you can change how quickly a fizz rotates to change that. So one of the big things, in fact, I think every single time I ever talked to Jared Land, the second thing he would say to me was, "When are you going to put autofocus? When are you going to put motors inside of a lens?" Like that was the entirety of it.
But they're
Like
heavy enough.
go do that. So, and there's a lot of reasons why that doesn't happen. Primarily reliability. Also, you lose manual capabilities that way. But uh, yeah, so I think that it depends on the application. What I'm seeing is I'm seeing a lot of people, instead of doing motors on some of the lenses, they're just going with autofocus lenses, photo lenses, which were great, particularly with cameras that have that ability, like Sony really has it figured out with the autofocus. Although now I'm walking into an area of cameras, which I do not want to debate the finer points of cameras, that you guys can sit there and do that all day long. I'm just an optics guy, but end of the day, like, some cameras are better suited to autofocus. Canon has very good AF technology. Sony does. So I think you're going to see more of those photo lenses. The problem is hybrids aren't really a thing, because if you put a gear on a photo lens, we've been doing that for years, and you have travel issues and it's hard to control. So I think what you're going to be seeing before light field imaging really becomes standard is you're just going to see manual cinema lenses that people are putting gears on, basically. So.
Fair enough. Let's see here. Oof. Let's see. What let's see, Phil talking about? Yeah, the different flavors that are out there. They've been modified quite a bit by, I guess, some publicly, some privately. You're probably not allowed to say.
I think everybody knows where the Vistas have landed, but yeah, I'm not allowed to say. I will say this, that the rental companies have taken these lenses and air gapped them in all kinds of places, which is a modification that you can do, basically the only one, besides some front and rear element coatings. And power changes and stuff like that. But yeah, there's a lot of versions out there, and that's why I say they've been rented so many places people don't even know. Like, I mean, it's just I have the list. I wish I could share it, but it's incredible. If you've gone to the movies and seen a superhero movie, guaranteed it had a Vista Prime on it because of the VFX capabilities. The regular Vistas are extremely popular for VFX. The Vista C is not a good idea for VFX because it's got significant distortion, and it would just create a mess. So,
Interesting. Can you discuss the differences between, say, Master Belts and Vista C?
so Masterbuilt, I don't know how to say that, because I have respect for the person that designed the Masterbuilt housing and stuff, and I would leave it up to him to comment. What it is pretty common publicly held knowledge that not knowledge opinion that they are Vista Primes inside. I'll say that. But what you're seeing with the Masterbuilt, in theory of just a general lens, is you're seeing a spacing of air gaps. You're seeing a change in the focus mechanism to be more smooth, which a lot of people like. Kind of like, if you've ever, going back to Master Primes, if you ever felt those, you could breathe on a Master Prime and it'll spin the focus gear. It's so incredibly loose. And then you've got other lenses where it's really, really tight. So So those are basically the differences there. But changes to coatings, if Masterbuilt used in some of their lenses other ones, they didn't really change. They changed some front element coatings. These are all things that you can do. And the Masterbuilt lenses have been extremely popular. A lot of rental companies have them. They have a different look for a few handful of reasons, uh, but I'm not directly confirming that they are um, Vistas inside there. But Vista C is different. Vista C is not a spacing. It's not spherical distortion. It's a subtle distortion that you would find, and the coatings are completely different. So the looks are not even close to each other in terms of look. So the Masterbuilt lenses been extremely popular. I believe they will continue to be extremely popular. They are a different look than the Vistas. So that's the kind of world they're playing in. I would put the Vista P more up with kind of not what a Masterbuilt does, because it's even different than that. But each manufacturer that may or may not have used Vistas or some type of donor lens, which there's a lot of backlash about that. A lot of people are like, oh, well, that's just a Canon lens inside. And they like try to discount it. It's like, no, it's the company did something to it. There's value to that. And so that will continue to be rented. There's a ton of Masterbuilt um, films out there, but Bullet Train, I think, was one of them that I believe, was shot on that. The one with, was it Brad
Yeah.
Pitt?
Yeah,
Anyway, so those that there are a ton of films that were shot with those as well. So
do you have new innovative lens designs for EF mounting coming in prototype or under development, and then such as stereo lens for Apple Vision Pro? I don't think those two are directly related.
I'd love to see an EF mount Vision Pro. That'd be pretty cool. Uh,
But
um, today, and
I mean,
unnecessary things that nobody needs. So EF mount is pretty much dead. That's not from a lens design perspective. We're not going that direction at all. I believe that we've gone to mirrorless designs, right? So EF mount is still plays plenty if you've got a red with an EF mount or any number of things. But Canon even has abandoned it. They're like, no, it's RF mount. So everybody's gone mirrorless for a number of reasons, including getting closer to the sensor, which changes your illumination. It makes the edges lighter, you can make more efficient designs. So all the designs that you're going to see coming forward that are new designs are all going to be mirrorless. They're all going to be LPL. They're all going to be RF, whatever, however the manufacturer intends it to be. That's really where you're going to see it. The Apple Vision Pro is another kettle of fish, and really in a different computational optics type space where I don't know how much that's going to play. I don't know if you want to expand upon that, John, but that's kind of basically my take on it.
right. All right, so this was going to be a multi-part question, so let me get through it because Fearless Syntax loves paragraphs. Let's see here. What is the difference between contrast and microcontrast on a lens? I think lenses have only one overall contrast value. Sometimes people refer to microcontrast to mean fine detail rendering, but that's more like resolution. So the term microcontrast in optical design refers to something different than plain contrast. So what is the difference between contrast and microcontrast?
Well, I believe what you're referring to as plain contrast would be considered the overall contrast value of the image, which is what you said, and that's veiling glare is what that is. So that's the way the light is casting relatively evenly over the entire image. Micro contrast is something that I'm fairly sure was coined by Leica or somebody that sold Leica, and really there is a connection between higher contrast values, and apparent resolution. So if you have a higher contrast lens, it's going to appear sharper, even though your eye is being fooled. So I think that's what is referencing. It's when you have the intersection of high contrast and the resolution value to where you can see the difference.
Okay. Lucas says he's more interested in image stabilization than autofocus for my type of work. Is anybody in the Hollywood world asking for IS on cinema lenses?
No, because what happens is you have, and that's not to discount IS at all. I'm just saying on the high end, there's entire industry built around camera
stability is more important than.
But if you lock down, I think most people may know this. If you put an IS lens on a tripod, turn that off, because it's constantly looking for zero, and it's never going to find it because it's just too steady. So So yeah,
King, I think that answer is no, never to be repeated because you can't anymore.
you can't. What?
Vista One, sorry. Are we seeing additions to the Vista One line
No, it's
ever?
discontinued.
Yeah,
Yeah,
completely.
it's a collector's item.
So you said Vistas and Vista, well, not Vista ones, but Vistas were lead based glass, and the new ones are not. What is the new
No, no,
ones?
I was talking
No.
about vintage lenses being lead
Oh,
based.
sorry.
Yeah,
Gotcha. Okay. Let's see.
you're talking
Phil's
about
saying,
coatings, basically. Yeah. Mhm.
yeah, 18 millimeter on VistaVision on IMAX on any large screen has profound audience reaction. I'll never forget. Have you tried any of the Vistas on that sphere camera?
I had heard of some testing. I sent a lot of lenses off to people.
Sure.
They go into some black hole and we don't know what they did with it. We get the lens back, but it's like what they're doing. I don't know. There's so many specialty applications because of the unique features of the Vistas, but I can't answer that directly. Yeah, that's all I can say.
Okay, fair enough. Do you have any? Wait, that's the same question. That's the same one. Okay. Guys, hit the like button. Yeah, please. Feels like I wouldn't mind seeing cough cough a set of mirrorless opera series primes.
So the Opera series is the high resolution photo optic that Tokina makes. Um, So basically, really, I know what Phil's getting at there, the differences in size and weight and possibly look, but really, the Vista Primes are, they're not that look, but they're the high res already look. I think there's other directions Tokina is considering going in the future, always with the mind of something different and innovative. Because people always talk about that with me. They're always like, "Well, what about how do you feel about other lens companies copying this or that, or how do you feel about all these lenses coming out? That's got to be crazy." And I actually think it's a good thing because there's so many choices now. It's an incredible amount of choices, and they're all different. None of them are the same. Some of them kind of play in the same space, but yeah.
It,
So it's all different.
it is
So
true how vastly different, even though they all may look very similar. Uh, the lenses are. There's so many little different things that we're finding and seeing, and I do love the playground that we get to participate in, for sure. Has Tokina, obviously they probably have, but I mean, has Tokina thought about doing like a Vista based big zoom, or even switching to say anamorphic? Is there what is Takina's thoughts on that? I mean, I know we have sub zooms, but
yeah, obviously, we have, I believe, entertained pretty much any direction we're capable of going, because there's a lot of things that Tokina is capable of that other people can't do, and there's a lot of things that Tokina is not capable of that other or don't desire to be capable of. I guess anything's capable possible, but um, yeah, I would say. I'm sorry, Scott. I lost my. I was thinking, say
as
it
far
again.
as zooms,
Zooms. Oh yeah.
is
So we went. I was like Australia. Yes. So we were Zooms were heavily entertained. I'm not going to leave them off the table, but I will say this: the number of people lining up to buy. One thing that Tokina does is they make exceptional image quality, and basically not willing to sacrifice anything on the size and weight end of it. It's because there's a lot of light lenses out there. So yes, Zooms have been seriously looked at, possibly designed. But really, what it comes down to is the number of people that'll pay $15,000-$20,000 for a Zoom these days. No matter how good it is a concern. And then basically, you're going into the rental market, and if you're going into rental companies, then that's the only price point where that kind of thing plays for the most part. And then at that point, you're in there with Fujinon or not Fujinon and Ingenue and all these other brands that have a lot of pedigree in Zoom and a lot of matching Zoom options. So really, Tokina would have to make a significant commitment and drop 3 Zooms all at once to cover the range. And I'm not saying that's not going to happen. I just the direction that things are going right now, it's not particularly consistent with the market.
there's definitely a lot of what's happening right now in the market, or
Yeah. Yeah. I
generally.
find myself talking like a doctor a lot of times where doctors will be
It's
like,
like,
he died. They don't say he died. They're like, his heartbeat was not consistent with life. So kind of
uh,
the same idea. It's like, that's not particularly consistent.
let's see here. I like that there are more choices, but I feel some of the specialness of certain glass is being watered down by so many subpar options, especially anamorphic lately. It's, it's a fair point, and you can opine on that if you wish.
I guess I have to ask for clarification on specialness. Are we talking about older lenses? Is that the
I,
specialness? Are we talking
I,
about?
I think, yeah, I think he's talking about there are so many fantastic high-end glass out there that have been around, like Panavision and various glasses, been out there forever. That the new inexpensive comes out and just waters it away, and nobody even thinks about those. Like for instance, I'm not saying anything negative about Blazar, but the Blazar comes in, enters the market with a very, very cheap anamorphic, and now no one thinks about what does a good anamorphic do.
Yeah, like a hawk or something like yeah.
Right. And then I would let you comment on that if you have thoughts on that or anything.
Well, it's a fair point, but I think a lot of people, Blazar, I believe, is I mean, for all intents and purposes, as far as I'm aware, they're targeting has anamorphic lens. They're like it's an anamorphic lens. Please buy it, and there's a lot of people that can never access that. So like I know I believe pretty firmly that Matthew, you have potentially the type of projects you shoot, you potentially have access to some of these higher end lenses, budgets for it. At least it's the way it appears to me. So I would say that yeah, that's an issue for people renting those types of lenses, but they still have a different look, and ultimately they're designed for people who cannot access even Atlas lenses. Like those, that's what that's pointed at. That's pointed at
Mm-hmm.
people that are like, "Ooh, I like anamorphic," and for whatever reason, I personally hate anamorphic. It's a controversial subject. Uh, but when I saw a chainsaw commercial shot in anamorphic, I was like, "This is the seventh layer of hell," or
But
whatever.
that's the most epic chainsaw, though.
Let's do a product shot with an anamorphic lens. Like, come
I
on.
I want to see vertical video in anamorphic, stretch the opposite way. I think that's when the market will shift. We're really going to embrace vertical then.
Yeah,
So
but
I'm
as far as
guessing
sorry, go ahead.
no. I was going to. So I'm guessing Tokina's not interested in anamorphic anytime soon.
More aside, not that they're not interested in it. It's just it's a function of pure unsacrificing, unapologetically not sacrificing image quality in any way. And what that makes is larger, heavier lenses. And you make an anamorphic Vista Prime, that sucker is going to be big, big. You're talking about like a 160 millimeter front diameter, and it comes with a porter. Like I mean, it would be something.
You think
So.
people complain about the weight now? Wait till you drive it.
And the thing is, though, actually, a lot of people say that. Like Phil's always telling me that he's like they're not actually that big and heavy, And it's like, yeah, they aren't in some ways, and they are in others, and it really
Well,
comes down to how you're using it. If you're using an LF Mini or the new 265 or a Raptor, you're already in that O'Connor 1030 2075 type space where weight is not your concern at that point.
I think it's weight. Weight was a bigger thing at the beginning when Tokina's Vistas were one of the first affordable, really high quality lenses out there that could, the average person could obtain. Whereas some of the others were way up there in price. So I think people are coming from a smaller budget, smaller lens up to the Vistas. They definitely weigh a lot, but they don't weigh that much.
Yeah,
I've,
yeah.
I've,
It just depends on what you're doing. I mean, and I wanted to. I have an axe to grind about adapters and mirrorless, which we'll get to, but it plays into that
oh,
conversation.
okay. Well, let me throw it to that one by saying, so you say EF is dead. Why not? Why not EF? It's one of the most adaptable lens designs you could do to mirrorless. Yeah, there's your chance.
I'm saying dead from a. I am not
Yeah, they're not
aware.
making.
I'm not aware of, another thing about the lens business is actually very small. Like all of us that are making and designing lenses are marketing them. We all know each other very well, and we're all kind of aware of each other's lane and what's going on, and really what's marketable. So EF lenses, I'm not aware of any projects that are currently built around that flange depth. It's everything is being designed for mirrorless at this point, and specifically LPL. Because remember, EF is 45 millimeter flange depth, right? And LPL is 44. So EF is a photo mount. And I learned this lesson with Vedra, with Micro Four Thirds, with the GH4. We made the Vedras, and they were not light. I mean, they were small, but they were not like super light. They weighed like a couple pounds a piece or whatever. And so what we had is people were putting them on follow focuses, and then there was this, we're all familiar with this torquing going on, and that's because the photo lens mounts, Micro Four Thirds, EF. This is why we
Yeah.
buy locking adapters, E mount. All these they're super weedy, light little mounts that are meant to have a tiny little autofocus lens go on. I mean, worst case scenario, like a 300 2.8, and that point you're dangling it off the lens. The camera's dangling off the lens
Off the
anyway.
lens, right? Yep.
Yeah, so they just weren't made for that. So EF, because LPL is very, very close to EF, that's really for cinema the moving standard. Just like Avery set the PL standard, this is really a leftover thing, and Blackmagic is partly to blame for it, and also Red, because at the time EF lenses were a going thing. There weren't a lot, because you have to remember what was the point of view in 2010, 11, 12, 4, well, 12 on, where what was the point of view on all this is we were getting away from photo lenses, and we had not yet set standards. We still don't have mount standards, but LPL is definitely as adaptable, and that's why you see like my friend Ron Sim at SimMod, he's making all these wonderful LPL adapters, stuff like that. Wooden camera, yeah. So LPL is definitely where it's at.
So then let's just let you go after it. If you want to grab your hammer to destroy, what's the deal with adapters? What don't you like about adapters?
Particularly with zoom lenses, it's the bane of my existence. I get calls all day long, like, you sold me this lens and it's not parfocal, or it doesn't focus, or something. And now it's like everybody's familiar with shims. What doesn't occur to them is maybe it's your adapter. So adapters, there's tolerances inside of RF mount and E mount. They're very small, but it's there. And because of the nature of the mounts, where they easily flexed and stuff, you tend to get differences in flange depth depending on which lens you're using, and the adapter is where it's at. That's what's driving your problem. If a lens is, we routinely get people to say, well, why can't you just collimate it to that particular adapter? Well, that's bad news. Like at a rental company, they'll get you fired in 2 seconds. Like, you have to go to standard, and then you're closing the
Right.
gap with the adapter. So if you buy an adapter, please buy an adapter with shims in it. That is going to be your best friend, because different lenses, even though they're all theoretically to the same flange depth, they behave differently on the different ones, and there's a significant tolerance. Telephoto lenses specifically really have a lot of leeway. Wides, forget it. If you got a 15 mil lens, you better be 000 on. So if you buy an adapter, please buy one with shims. Um,
A shim a day keeps the focus away.
I'm about ready. I actually have on my phone and my desktop, I have a macro written where I just type in a couple keywords and it puts out my shim answer, because I'm just tired of it. I'm just yeah.
Yeah, it's yeah. Let's see here.
Hi, Alan.
What am I looking for? Where was that? Oh, yep. So Luca had a question. What do you think the future trend on lenses is? Where are things headed optically in the world? How do you see the future of optics?
Yeah, as usual,
You're
that's a
welcome.
great
You're
one.
welcome.
Uh, this is the last time I was on. The last time I was on, you dropped like 40 puns in the title card. It was pretty good.
That's what I do. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you got to be good at something, and I can't be good at anything else.
Still trying to figure out what I'm good at. So I would say the future is, how do I say this without being like just coming off like vague and ridiculous? I think
Just say what you can say.
yeah, the whatever the cameras are doing, that's kind of where the new optics are going to go. And it's logical, it's like peanut butter and jelly. So the smaller size cameras is what we're seeing. So I believe you're going to see optics that are smaller. However, obviously, in the frame of reference of what we are just talking about with air gaps and all these things that make cinema lenses better and different, that's those are directly competing issues. And so I think it's settling somewhere in the middle anyway. And there's all these discussions about uh, I don't even want to say the word, but artificial intelligence. We'll drop that in there because
Oh
you gotta
gosh.
pencil that in. So I think there's some image alterations to tools and stuff that will come that will make more basic lenses more usable for different things. But ultimately, you can't really easily or budget friendly replace image characteristics without the lens. That's why we're so obsessed with lenses in general, and why even though you have 10 more lens companies than you did, it's still cool because there's all kinds of stuff out there.
What are your thoughts on the in-camera corrections of lenses lately?
You mean
Mostly not
where the
the
camera
cinema, where for instance a 20 a 24 to 105 Canon f2.8 lens doesn't actually cover full frame. It's altered with the vignette in digitally to compensate for it.
yeah, I mean that's the advantage of when you're like Nikon, for example. You're or Canon, you're playing in a closed ecosystem there where you've got a camera and a lens, and you can do whatever you want with it, and that's wonderful. And that's why shooting lenses that are matched to the brand of your camera for certain applications are always great, because you're ensuring that everything is in the same ecosystem. So yeah, that type of camera adjustment for that, and if it weren't for such a wide gambit of lenses out there, I feel like Avery could probably do something with that. But then they're guessing, and they've got so many different. There's too many factors there when you're talking about opening it up to everything. So that's definitely even though it's happening at capture, it's happening after the light collects it. Obviously, the sensor collects the light. So yeah, there's with a wide lens, with you walk in and you're like, can is the customer going to shoot a Hawk anamorphic, or are they going to shoot a old canoptic? I mean, to get a sensor that somehow compensates for that, loading in distortion profiles. Zeiss was for a while there. I don't know if they're still. I'm assuming they're still doing it. They had their distortion correction software available, integrating with /I technology, which certainly is an exceptional thing. That would need to be available for other lenses. I believe you can put in other lenses on it, but that's pretty cool. So I'd say that's kind of the closest thing that I've seen. I think it's going to take somebody kind of tying that all together rather than having a brand centric viewpoint, which I think is the problem with most companies, is they just think about their brand and their optics and not consider the wider space.
I had one question and I thought of a second one, so now I can't remember the first one. Resolution in optics. What is the holy grail? What do we achieve for? What do we not care about after a certain point? What are we striving for? I don't know. Is there a point that we should not care anymore about the resolution ability, or the definition ability, I guess, of optics?
Well, there's such a thing as over resolution, and that's basically what you used to see with Moire and anti-aliasing and all that. So yeah, there's a limit. It has to do with the size. There's an actual math formula of the MTF, right? You can calculate the modulation transfer function of how the camera can tell the difference between light and dark, and the pixel size has to do with that. So as we get smaller and smaller pixel size, the need for the lens to be able to differentiate that in higher resolution grows. And so in the past, lenses were driven by film. So the film drove a lot of the resolution of the image. And so the lenses didn't need to be that good. They're some cases 40 line pairs. To give an idea, most companies will try to target at least 120 or more, 140. A lot of lenses land in that line pair per millimeter. The Vistas are capable of resolving over 200 line pairs, and some of the focal lengths up to 300. Other lenses that are extremely sharp are the Sigma lenses. Those are razor sharp lenses. So it really comes down to, but then we get down to it and we look at our images, and if you're shooting ants on a log in the forest or in your kitchen, whatever the case, you want like really sharp image, right? You want that planet Earth edge to edge, and those are shot with like broadcast lenses primarily. They're high resolution optics. So resolution definitely will play and has an issue with it, but ultimately people don't like it. They don't. That's why we're all putting diffusion filters and scratching our keys on our front element and whatever else we're doing to try to scrub
We're
off
not
some
Christian.
resolution. So yeah. So resolution plays, but ultimately it really has to do with the pixel size of the sensor, and as they get smaller, so does the resolution. Um,
Beyond
so
200,
to Phil's
300.
point there about crazy line pairs per millimeter, the one thing we have to realize is that this is on a bench, on an optical bench, where the lens is not moving at all, and in any stretch of the imagination. Like, for example, I worked at Schneider Optics for nearly 10 years, and they actually had, in Germany, they had a room where they tested lenses where the concrete slab sat in a tub of sand just to completely remove any type of vibrations from the earth. And so, yeah, you can get lenses that resolve that, but generally speaking, 200 to 300 is about the limit. Because once you put it on a mount, then everything goes out the window, because then you're dealing with tolerances of the mount and uh, all kinds of stuff. So people
Uh,
buy these super high res lenses, but ultimately they're not actually shooting at that resolution.
right. Design wise, comparing a cinema lens to, say, a broadcast lens, not an ENG lens, but a broadcast style lens. Obviously, those are usually big zooms. But you were talking about the quality that goes into the broadcast lenses? Is there a higher resolution or a higher what design changes are different in those two worlds optically?
Yeah, you're looking for that high contrast image. That tends to be how it is, and that's kind of because it's really hard to go long contrast with a whole ton of elements. You need super efficient coatings to cut through, get the light to travel through there without losing too much of it. So it automatically tends itself toward green flare, green looking lenses that have very high contrast, and the resolution is high. Also because the sensor sizes are smaller on broadcast lenses, so you can definitely shoot smaller sensors. There was a time when I first started in the industry in the early 2000s that everybody was using Sony F900 broadcast cameras with PL mount modifications. One of the first films I ever had a connection to was The Phantom Menace, and they were shooting those on there. So yeah.
Yeah, Phil has a question, and I would like for you to actually explain half of his question so we can understand what his question is. I've lost it a little bit there. The trickiest balancing act is high resolving lens with a niche or nice micro contrast and acquaintance,
Acutance.
acutance without being too toothy. I totally lost it. Toothy. Smooth sharp is a good thing. One way or the not bad either. So you explain the question to me and then answer that.
It's no secret Phil and I are good friends, and
Oh yes.
I have more than once. My favorite one was we were at CES years ago, and he used the term quiddity or something like that. Okay, good job. So really toothy being biting, right? And so I think that's the reference there, and
Okay.
acutance being acuity, which would be the peak of understanding, and so yeah, I would say that basically Phil's saying there, a good sharp lens, right? Toothy being sharp, and the contrast, we already talked about that. So smooth sharp again is you've got resolution, but you have that transition, uh, the distortion, not the spherical distortion, but the field distortion, the sagittal distortion that creates the kind of pleasing look that we just can't quite put our finger on, and that's why all these other lenses that claim vintage look, all they're doing is dropping contrast or creating spherical distortion. It's not the same as field distortion like you see with the Vista C or the Cook lenses or lens is modeled after that.
Very cool. Very cool. I think Phil just asks some of these questions sometimes just to make me go, I don't know what he means. He's always teaching me something for sure. Are there any documents you want to pull up and talk through anything that specific, or I can really start going through questions if you want to.
Well, real quick, I'll just show. I mean, I don't know if it's really.
Of course it is. If we have you on here and it's optic related, people are here to find out some optic stuff. You ready? I'll put that in there. Let me drop that up, and then I will drop it up. Did I do it wrong again? Oh man, come on now. There we go. There we go. Hi. There we go.
So the Tokina website, we have a nice group shot of all the Vistas. But down here we have the differences. So the Vista C being the new ones, they're all about the flare. The Vista P being all about character, which we more would say spherical distortion, swirly bokeh, and a reduced contrast. And then we have the standard Vista primes. So if we look at the Vista P, and people always ask me, they're like, what do the Vistas look like? I'm like, well, really honestly, the best encapsulation of the Vista look is Ted Lasso. That's shot entirely on Vista primes. I just saw the director of photography for that at BSC Expo in London, and he was talking about how much he loves the lenses, and they're an integral part of that look. So that's what it looks like. This here with the vintage look, basically what we're talking about is the spherical distortion. So it's very swirly and roundy, and that's literally because we're imaging, part of the sphere of the elements. The sphere of the elements are starting to be seen. And so that's the look with air gapping, which would be taking a standard lens and pushing air gaps out to create that spherical distortion. Otherwise, the flare is the same. And then if we go to Vista C, besides being orange, and if you haven't seen the video, you should, but you can see here the almost kind of ghosting type flare to the bokeh. This cat's eye shape, as we call it, is a signature design of the Vistas that you'll see in all the focal lengths, but the way that it renders that bokeh is completely different with that smoothness. And you can almost see it here in her hair also, where it's kind of falling off, really drawing your attention to it. So you should watch the video, which I will take the chance to plug my friend Horatio again. Horatio Martinez shot this for us. If you have not seen his feature, Simone, on Netflix, you should. Absolutely incredible photography. And I was very, very lucky that he was available to shoot this. And then if you look here, you can see here the drop off, the distortion, the rolling of it. It's very soft. That's what people love, and they just can't quite put their finger on. And that's the difference there, as well as the flare. And you can see here, there's this, I call it the red rock up front, and you've got these blue flares. Now, the grade on this particular film, I left it totally up to the director, and he chose a kind of green, deeper look, which is fine. It's been debated as to whether it's great or not. We're adding the ability to download the raw footage to our site so that people can take it in to resolve and play if they want, to see what the flares actually look like. But that's really what it looks like. You get the blue color with the red up front, and that's format dependent, because if you're shooting like a Super 35, you're not even going to see that flare. You'll only see the blue part. So this is LF open gate. And then here you can see as well with this flare here. And this is actually a design of the Vista primes. We added a filter thread to the Vista primes specifically for, putting them in helicopters like Phil does, or other stuff. And so where you can't have a matte box. So that's why that's there, but it also creates that little line flare that is possible to get. So, yeah, so that's pretty much it. But if you have not seen this video, you should. It really shows what they do. So
very interesting. Have you done any ABCD, I guess, shots with the exact same shot with the Vista P, Vista C, Vista 1, so people can see the swirly and the like footballs, to see how they are treated to each other? Or?
Yeah, I'm going to stop sharing. Should I stop sharing?
No, let's go. Oh, look, you're big now. Oh, wow, we've switched places.
Yeah. So I was so distracted by your format. What were we talking about?
We were talking about, have you done a ABCD
Yeah,
comparison?
yeah. So the answer is yes and no. So we've done a bunch of development stuff. Nothing that we want to show people just because it's not particularly attractive footage. But we are planning to very soon shoot kind of an ABC. We didn't do that to begin with because, and I think it was the right thing. We had very limited time to launch the product, and I really wanted to show people what was possible because ultimately, you guys are artists. Ultimately, you're looking to see what you can do with the tool, not really reading off a list of getting your symptoms read to you about what the lens does. It's not that interesting. So we are going to be doing that. We are going to follow up with that with a comprehensive set of tests for people to look at. But generally speaking, the most important thing to know is everything before Vista C was modifications of the basic Vista look, and Vista C is a complete reboot, different look altogether. So
very cool. We talked last time you were on. We talked mostly about filtration and such because you have a very in-depth filter background as well, coatings and all of that. I think I had a pun about it, but I can't remember. So filter location in behind the lens, in front of the lens, in the lens. Can you talk about pros and cons of each, and why people don't embrace putting in lens? Like Ingenue has filtration that pops in on some of their lenses, and I think somebody else does too. I can't remember, but
Nikon and Canon had some. I mean, it depends on. It was a function of front elements and all that, but basically, it's all about magnification. So if you put a filter up front, which is pretty much how we do diffusion and ND and various things for a number of reasons, you put it up front, the magnification is much lower. Therefore, the effect is not as strong. So it's more tunable, I guess would be the word, because as you get to the center of the lens, like the Ingenue IOP with their Optimo primes, I've done a fair bit of custom filter work for that lens specifically. I think it was a great idea. It was a good concept for Ingenue. But the reality of it is that you need almost no material whatsoever in there to get a pretty significant level of diffusion because the nodal point of the lens, everything's coming together there, and it really is the maximum amount of for lack of a better term, focus you can put on an element. So and then rear filtration has a very long history in nets, primarily is where it started. Cinematographers in the 20s. I'm currently writing a book on the history of diffusion filters, and in that book we talk quite a bit about the genesis of it, which was nets. Nets was the first, other than defocusing a lens, which happened. Nets were the thing that did it, and that is rear. You need to put it in rear because if you put nets up front, it's a whole hot mess. That's why the net filters that Tiffen made and Schneider makes are not particularly popular because nets up front just is not creating enough diffraction to really give you the look that you're after. Too easy to image also. So I would generally say in the rear and in the middle, you're talking about whispers of diffusion. So small it's hard to even see with your eye, and then you see it on the image. So for controllability and so forth, front mount is still the same. However, certain images, certain things like nets, they have to go in the back to be the most effective. So yeah.
Let's see. Maybe share grid, good test. This new Tokina in the library app. Good. I mean, I would volunteer if at some point you have 4 of the same focal length of each one.
Well, next week I may or may not be going somewhere where I may or may not be doing something kind of like that. So I think
maybe you'll take care of that for everybody.
Not going to have to wait that long to see more content. My friend Eric DeHaven at DeHaven Camera, he posted on his YouTube some pretty basic flare tests of the Vista Cs, which you can see. But you're going to be seeing a lot more content with those. And come this summer, well, next summer, by the time it releases, you'll see quite a few films that were shot with them. So the plan's already very significant. Yeah.
Let's see here. Let's see. So your book, do you have a title for it yet? Have you thought about it?
No, we're still new.
Have you thought about Sift Happens?
Sift Happens. There you go. I'm writing it with a couple of very respected members of the ASC, and one of them said, "Fuzzy thoughts from sharp minds" was the title.
cornucopia of
Maybe
no, that's
something along the lines of, history of optics and diffusion or something like
I
that.
can't believe it's not filtered. How about?
There you go. Yeah, but
Oh,
anyway,
here comes.
we get into the very history of really in detail the people and everything that really started this diffusion and how it's evolved. And the front and rear of the lens is always in that argument, as I believe we're going to call it intended use and location. So the location of the optics has to do with magnification. So generally, if you're in the rear, you almost no diffusion material whatsoever to create a strong effect, and then up front you need more. So
Gotcha. And then, right, but like up front, you have to adapt it based upon how much what the focal length is, and in the back you don't, right?
right, but it's that is true, but it's such a strong effect. I mean, really, I mean, I
Okay.
have firsthand experience with this making custom filters for the Ingenue
Mhm.
optical primes, and Tiffin has as well. And it's just a complete challenge. You make it super light where you can barely see it, and it's still too much
Way
because
too
it
much. Okay.
crazy. So you're kind of going with, like you said, with consistency to focal. I would also say consistency to look. The ability to totally destroy the image with a rear or center mount diffusion is very high.
All right, here comes a four-part question. Let me read it off here. They're making impressive improvements given this short time span. Could you speak about some of the technical innovations behind those achievements in the industry? Prices of cinema lenses have come down significantly in recent years thanks to Chinese manufacturers and Tokina too. These Chinese affordable lenses are not there yet in quality. What did the Chinese do recent that they couldn't do when they came out with the affordable DZO RLs, 2,000 apiece? And then, does it have to do with the lens design becoming cheaper, automation and manufacturing, rare compounds becoming more accessible? Something else that you could share? I think you touched on pretty much most of that at the beginning, but feel free to answer.
Well, it just comes down to efficiency of manufacturing. Also, I'm certain that there has been some overestimation of the cinema market size, the number of us that are out there actually making films and whatnot. There's far less than I think these manufacturers realize. And they're getting into it now going, oh, wait, we can only sell hundreds of these, not tens of thousands. So there's some of that. And then you've already seen, and you will continue to see some of them fall off because they simply can't support themselves because of the number of competitors. But generally, I would say it's optimization for manufacturing. Efficiency of manufacturing has been there for quite some time. It's more about making designs that fit that, and also simply the company setting their mind to compete, because a lot of companies outside of Europe and the US have always looking to target and get into any market that they can. It's business. It's the way it should be. So they've joined and innovated. I would say the quality is not there. Would be more a statement of what are we comparing it to. The quality is certainly, I would argue, there for the average YouTube user that's going to put something up and not be, or you know. Um, so I would say that quality is probably there. I think we could argue that, but comparative to high end primes, as we've talked about quite a bit, the design choices and things are significantly different, and so that's also niche market. So what you're really going to see is you're seeing this kind of parsing of the market or the abilities of the different manufacturers to go, okay, we're going to make the absolute cheapest possible lens we can, which would be in the cinema world would be Meike, and then or Mike, and then or you could go signature prime route and everything in between. So there's a spectrum, and each one has its own benefits. But yeah, I would say generally it's optimization of manufacturing and simple, good old moxie to get out there in the industry and mix it up. So
Sure.
but you are going to see lens. I believe we're going to lose a couple lens manufacturers in the near future, just because the market just doesn't support.
You talking about big ones or little ones or both?
I'm not really willing to say, but I would say that I am confident that we're going to lose a couple lens manufacturers, just because. I mean, we already saw it with Vazen. They were in for a second and then they're out, and I think you're going to see some of that. It's just not sustainable. But the ones that have gained a significant lead, is particularly on the Chinese side, they're going to continue to be there and provide quality, low cost solutions.
What? in an entire lens design, what is the part of the design and or construction and or elements, what have you, pun intended, that is holding the lens back the most? Like what is it that you hit most that keeps the lens from performing better or not achieving your desired results? Like, is it like
I I don't think I you could say it's oversight or lack of knowledge of what exactly they're going for. I think optical designers, I mean, there's a spectrum of them that understand exactly what they're designing for, and other ones that are like, they tell them we need this resolution, and that's it, and they just kind of, the design choices are kind of almost a byproduct of the main goal formula, like for example higher contrast with resolution. So yeah, those are the things I'd say. It's more, and that's really what I do. Is I'm not an engineer. I am somebody who speaks engineer, and I speak customer, and I go in between the two. So my job is to gather information from you guys as to what exactly you're looking for, even if you don't know what you're looking for, which is what we did with the Vista C, and then applying it. So it's more good information getting back to the engineers, and really an understanding of the customer's needs and what really needs to happen, or making inferences based off of that, and also triangulating with what else is going on in the industry or what you think is going to happen. And so it's like any company, there's hits and misses, and usability. And so yeah, I don't think it's the lenses aren't, the manufacturers aren't bad at what they do. They're just misinformed, I think, would be the best way to put it.
so you say you take the specifications from the customer and deliver it to the engineers. That's a great
Yep.
little Office Space little.
Yes, I love Office Space. Yeah. Yeah.
Who doesn't? It's so real.
Yeah.
Let's see, Phil. In a time where so much can happen in virtual design space, the artistry of an actual lens design comes from observing what happens under a wide variety of conditions and entirely of the image.
Yes.
Yeah.
No,
Phil's
no.
not asking a question. He's not. What has like volume walls and LED walls and such? Has that changed anything which comes to designing of optics? Has it affects it at all, or not at all?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, some of it's the byproduct of modern engineering, but if you have chromatic aberration of any kind on a volumetric capture, that's bad news. I mean, we all know it, but I would say of stray light becomes extremely important. Contrast becomes extremely important, and that's really where it comes down to. And one of the beautiful things about the Vista C is we've maintained that resolution. The distortion is different, but we've maintained that resolution and chromatic aberration control, which is very hard to do with alternative coatings, and anytime you're trying to deconstruct the image, which we have. So that's really that. And so I think that's why I think some lenses are exceptional choices for volumetric capture, including the Avery signature primes, possibly the Enzos. There's a number of things. So
Hey, Robert likes your Revarsity
you
clear fit.
misspelled it.
Yeah, Revis.
Revar,
It probably
Revis.
auto-corrected. It doesn't understand how big you are. I mean,
Yeah, it's just
can you talk about Tokina manufacturing? How it's done? Is it all automated? Is there some hand stuff? What I don't know if some of it you just literally can't talk about it. They keep it a big secret, or you know.
optical factories are optical factories. You go in one, you've been in pretty much them all. As far as, I mean, there's differences in machines and processes and stuff, but this stuff is not. I think so many people, in fact, I know pretty much everybody has this idealistic vision of what an optical factory looks like, and nothing could be further from the truth. I can assure you. So people imagine these clean rooms with they're using all the machines NASA
So it's in
uses.
an old garage where they change the oil in cars.
Well, in the case of some of them, yeah. But the they're clean, and they're controlled in the way that they should be. But there's almost none of this robotic manufacturing going on at all. It's the elements are manufactured, the parts are manufactured, to certain tolerances, but there's still a significant amount of hand assembly that goes on pretty much all of the levels, including even the most affordable. In the case of photo lenses, where you're talking about a much higher run rate, now that's a lot more automated, but there's still somebody eventually putting stuff together, testing things. The Vista Primes are manufactured in pretty small quantities, relatively speaking. So they are hand built by 3 or 4 people that know what they're doing, and the same 3 or 4 people have been there a long time. And so it's all very very intensive hand process in a building that you would not think would be an optical factory.
How do you maintain quality control with hand, or maybe you're referring to just the lens housing, but like the optics, are they ground by hand at certain point or polished? No, they're all
No, they're
machined that way?
manufactured. Yeah, they're manufactured machines that are dedicated to that.
Okay.
So yeah, but their precision manufacturing happens in the elements, but the way it goes together and the people that do it are highly trained, and they check it. There's multiple checks and cross checks, and it's not unlike launching a rocket or something. There's all these different orders of things that have to happen
I've
and
heard that's
test.
super easy. I don't know.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So, but yeah, no, it's very much a skill of the person that's putting it together, and the processes that the manufacturer puts around quality control. I've once upon a time I distributed some lenses. I won't say the name of the company. I don't believe they're still around, but I was getting lenses back from this factory with fingerprints right in the middle of elements. It's possible, and that's because it was like the lowest common, build a lens and get it out the door kind of thing. Whereas with the Vista Primes and some of the other lenses, they're very much boutique hand assembled items. Yeah.
Wow. Feel free, everybody in the thing, to ask some questions about lens design, lenses, Vistas, Vista P's, Vista C's, Vista ones. I guess you can't have those anymore, but just let's fill Ryan. We got him. Let's get some answers, and if you put them in there, then we can see your optics questions. See what I did there? Double entendre. Let's think. So vintaging of lenses. What are you talked about it briefly earlier in the premise of getting between Vista to Vista P and then ultimately Vista C. What are some things that are being done, could be done, that vintages lenses? I can't even say that. Vintagizes. Vintages.
You mean modern lens manufacturing?
Yeah. If you take a brand new lens and you want to vintagize it, what kind of things are having to be done to do such things?
Like I said, what drives that look is contrast, distortion, spherical versus field, all that stuff, and so really, that's why. And I say this with the utmost respect to my friends at Sigma, but those classic primes was exactly why you don't mess with photo lens. They just, they were just like, the contrast was ridiculous, dropped, and it just didn't look good, because it's not because it's a bad lens design. It's a beautiful lens design. It's just not meant to do that. It's not, they don't hold together. They're not intended. There's no real estate to do that. So that's an example. And these other vintage looks, they tend to be just coating related, which really doesn't address the distortion and all that. So the issues that really drive the look, the flare color. So yeah, that's really what you're seeing. So, and unfortunately, much like cars or any other thing, there's people saying things that aren't necessarily true, but it's close enough, and maybe it works for the intended purpose. I don't know. We're like with the Vista C, we are going for a heavily engineered, really truly after all the good things that you would expect out of a vintage lens without all the trappings thereof. So
Phil's question kind of brought me back to a question I meant to ask you while you were talking about large format coverage of lenses, and something that Vista wanted to do. You had mentioned that lenses, and then the question was, what is the future of lenses? And you said lenses follow cameras. The flip side of that, though, is without the lenses, the cameras don't feel like they can get out there. Case in point would be Red. they wanted to create a very large format sensor, and there was no lenses to support it. Is there? I mean, I don't know how much more expensive or how much bigger that kind of lens design would be to be able to cover that, and what you be giving up or give it up. But is that not something somebody should consider? Trying to put a larger format out there of lens coverage or illumination circle that could cover these bigger ones that don't exist yet?
Well, there's the concept of expanders, which are basically teleconverters in the rear of the
Right.
lens. They take the image circle, they magnify the image, and they kick it out further, so you lose some focal length and a little bit of light. But very weak expanders. We made one at Vadra that was ahead of its time. It was the 1.2 expander. There are some issues with that. Basically, there's fitment issues. But some lenses they just can't be expanded because of real estate in the back. If the rear element projects into the camera body, so the expander route is definitely something. Weak expanders is definitely something. Kippon made their 1.25 expander, for LPL. So there's that. Lenses that are designed specifically for larger formats, that's really tough. And the reason it's tough is because ultimately people got to buy it. And if there's only 50 of that camera running around in the world, how many of those lenses are you really going to sell, to justify all the expense and time and everything. So it's not that it won't happen. Somebody's going to do it. It might be us, it might be Tokina, it might not be. But the point is, like, larger formats remain a niche application. And I'm not sure that I see the average person pulling out a 70 millimeter sensor camera, although we're kind of seeing that with the GFX, right? I mean, it's smaller sensor, but you're starting to see some bigger sensors are definitely. I mean, ultimately, the camera manufacturers got to go somewhere. They do. And some people were like, "Oh, well, this whole full frame Vista Vision sensor thing was just, the camera manufacturers got to sell something else, right?" And there is a certain element of that for sure, but also, of course, it's tools and applications that have already existed. So, yeah.
Yeah, the GFX is definitely one that comes to mind. That it's one of those camera that could spur another push forward of full frame, like we have with full frame. And I just, wonder what's out there that will cover it. And like you said, you have to use expanders to do it. Even with Vista, right? You have to use an expander on the
No,
it
the
covers
20,
no?
well, below 29, but 29 and up.
Okay.
So, yeah. But yeah, I'm excited. I'm very excited to see Fuji get into the camera space. I think we all are. They make exceptional. I don't own one, but they make exceptional small cameras. I'm personally a Olympus guy, defunct. But
OM. Oh.
yeah, OM, I guess. Yeah. But I love Micro Four Thirds. But I would say, it's them doing what they're doing with that camera. I really hope that it's successful for them. It's definitely going to push things in the right direction. Uh, Black Magic, I don't know. Who knows
Right.
what's
They
going to happen with
do.
that. They do. It's and honestly, like I've said it before, and maybe it's controversial opinion, but like I feel that Blackmagic kind of doesn't care about filmmakers necessarily. It was kind of a miss. It was like they were trying to make stuff for broadcast, church, and other applications.
The
They're a
micro
switcher.
TV. Yeah.
Yeah. And so they just kind of fell backwards into it, and they have an entire division that cares about it a lot, and they are definitely going places in the cinema market. But it wasn't their original intention, I don't think, and it just kind of happened that way. So it'll be interesting to see how they transition. Whereas Fuji's coming in at a price point, and they're like, yeah, here it is. Whereas Blackmagic has a different pedigree. So to see what's going to happen with that 17K, I think there are applications people are not aware of or thinking about for that camera that I think is going to be more successful. And so large format optics for that, there are very few that cover. And so for that case, that's very good for Tokina. And their intention is to continue to push on image circles and performance of optics. It's purely performance. That's what we're after. Which ultimately, that's what your customer sees. That's what your audience sees. They don't see what you shot it with. They see the end result, and there is that indefinable thing that I'm hoping to define here, but that's really what it is.
Abstractly, how do you feel about manufacturers going about supporting larger than this division full with new optics? That's based
Comes
on
down to
all of that,
markets,
but
money. Like how much can we make? If y'all get on board and buy 70 mil IMAX digital sensors tomorrow, you're going to see 20 different lens options for it. Um, I personally believe that it's going to remain niche for a while. It may eventually get to the size that supports that, but really at that point, you're going with custom optics, which is entirely possible. It's entirely possible if you've got a decent amount of money to get a custom lens set made. Um,
interesting. Any new Revarsity lens filters coming out? Asking for a friend.
Yeah, we just going to announce our whirlpool filter, which is a wave filter that you can rotate. I probably have some images here I can show.
Interesting.
Yeah, let me see if I can find it real quick. Oh, no. Where is it? Sorry, this is not anticipated. So the whirlpool filter is. See if I can open this. And then I will share my screen. Will I share my screen? What am I sharing?
Sharing is caring. There you go. Add the scene, and then we'll take that to Spotlight. Go for it. All right.
So you see that hole there with the
Wow.
wave.
Okay. Right.
And this is the solid wave where there's no hole. And then this is the whirlpool, and it gets more interesting in anamorphic. So it gives you like this really strong spherical distortion wavy effect, and so that's anamorphic with the wave. So it's a specialty one, but that's basically what we're announcing or have been announcing.
And the idea behind that is not it's not constantly moving. You use it and move the camera and the effects.
No,
on the
you
outside.
rotate. It sits in a rotating tray, so you rotate the filter, and you can. That's why we call it the whirlpool filter. So
it's the oh my god, I'm drunk. What did I drink?
Yeah, it's a specialty optic, and then we have our diffusion. I'm going to stop sharing this. Our diffusion filters, the scarf dust and PA tiers have been extremely popular. We have a new one coming very soon. So that'll be out once we get around to shooting the video, because in our style, we launch it with kind of a poking fun at things video, silly video. And then, so I actually got it sitting here, but I gotta
talk to you offline about that one, because if I recall, I'm several behind on that one.
Yeah, but we have a new diffusion, quite a few new things. Revarsity is really the function of the full manifestation of my ADHD. So I just kind of make a little bit of everything. And I'm working very, very hard this year to not make new things, but it's proving to be difficult.
Not spend money would be the way to do that. Any chance of metadata support on Vista Primes?
So we actually designed metadata. We've done it. It's possible. It's a completely different housing. But we are thoroughly convinced nobody will pay the price for it. It's very expensive to do, particularly with the Vista Primes. So we're kind of waiting to see the application. A lot of people talk about metadata, but very few people are actually using it, really. And of course, that's changing. So my comment on that would be that we have it ready to go, but we're kind of waiting until such time as it becomes broadly important to have. And then you have to address the issues of the thousands and thousands of Vista Primes that are already out there, and what do you do with those? And because it's not something you retrofit. One thing's for sure, the current existing housing does not and cannot fit /I. It will be a different housing for sure. There is no real estate inside that lens right now.
So there's definitely labor involved, plus parts and everything else.
But yeah, to answer the question, I would say soonish in lens land. That's 3 to 5 years, maybe less. But it really depends on application. We have to see more integration of /I data on a level to where people would be willing to see that as a value, which I believe currently not enough people see that as a value.
And that is definitely something in the Hollywood world of manufacturing. What we all, a handful of us, think is something everybody asks for, ends up being nothing in the grand scheme of things that anybody's asking for. kind of like time lapse on reds. Very few people ever ask for that, and like you're saying with the eye data, that people are not asking for it in quantity to justify it, I guess.
Yeah, people that know me well are tired of me saying this, but I'll say it again. Like, I am absolutely convinced you could make the perfect product, and somebody would come along and be like, "Well, if it was blue and had a handle on the left, I would have bought it." And I got to tell you, like, I love my friends at News Shooter, but you will never find a more negative group of users than on News Shooter, where they just every single time you make a new product, there's somebody on there like, "This is crap," blah blah blah. And so there's always people that want to complain, and it's not that they're wrong; it's that either they don't understand exactly the product and where it's positioned, or they simply think that it's so easy to do all these things, and there's a free lunch everywhere, and there's not. You make one design choice. It's like a balloon. You push it on one end, something's going to pop out on the other. There's no free lunch in optics. It's really true. And so you're going to continue to see, and that's why there's so many lens choices out there, because ultimately there's only so many design decisions you can make in one lens to make it work. Yeah.
I think Matt's question was basically answered. Do you see for 65 millimeter lenses becoming a new wave? Yeah. Do you see large format becoming a new wave, or it's a wait and see?
No, large format is here. I mean, it's present. I mean, we've with Avery launching their 265 camera, and Blackmagic coming close on their 17K, Fuji coming close on their camera. I would hope that some other lens manufacturers follow along. But yeah, that's the trend. And because camera manufacturers, it's not that they just got to sell cameras, but they do. But like they also, there are, what other tools are we providing? What direction are we going? And I believe very strongly that at least on the high end, that's where we've gone. As of 6 months to a year ago, even sooner than that, earlier than that, we've arrived. But always on the high end, the things that I see, I get privileged to witness on the very high end. It takes a while, obviously, for that to trickle down. And that's true of large format sensors. It's true of metadata. It's true of a number of technologies. So yeah, we're there.
It's less of a Home Depot every 5 years is carpet year, and then 10 years it's wood floor year, and it's always a good time to get new flooring.
Yeah, but I would say that the one thing that I'm noticing is a lot of and it's not wrong. I mean, they're just trying to sell their product, but a lot of these manufacturers are claiming that their image circle or their illumination is a certain format that is most definitely not, particularly at close focus, because when you go closer focus, your image circle shrinks. So that's also something. That's why you want to start with a lot of that. So I think from my perspective, it's going to be a little frustrating to see people claiming certain coverage points that are not actually there, but that gets ferreted out pretty quickly, because you go shoot once and you're like, wait a minute, this didn't actually cover my sensor. So let's see.
In the case of the Sigma City lenses, which most of them are photo lenses, are there any other optical differences since they're City lenses?
To my understanding, no. The 65 and the 40 millimeter in their line was specifically designed, at least I believe, I don't know for sure, but I believe it was specifically designed for cinema, although it meant to match the design aesthetic of the other lenses. I believe the performance of those lenses is better because it was designed for that purpose.
That's what I heard as well.
The Sigma photo lenses are exceptional. They really are. They're very high resolution. It's a very specific look that kind of couldn't be more anti to what the Vista Primes are in a lot of ways. So, particularly now the Vista C, but yeah, those are photo lenses that they put a very beautiful housing on, and potentially made some other modifications to which I cannot speak to because I am not particularly privy to that. But I would say, based on what I understand of it, they did a very good job rehousing some photo lenses, and quite successfully so. And people really like the look, and as do I. It's a wonderful look.
And it was something that I think they started. You can correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe Tokina did it and I didn't know it, but they were color matching their photo lenses before pretty much anybody else that I was aware of.
Yeah, they're very technology forward, very, very rare company in the industry. In fact, that they're technology forward, and they're also extremely good at marketing. I have nothing but respect for that company, but I can say that they have made a number of advancements. But like Tokina is very well aware of color matching as well. Ingenue was really in the early 2000s when we were nonsensically shooting 3D with 2 cameras and a mirror rig and all kinds of completely unsupportable ideas. They Ingenue was offering matched focal length and matched because 2 lenses, just because you have a 50 mil does not mean that they're the same thing. There'll be a 50, same manufacturer, 50.1, 50.2, 50.4. So Ingenue was matching focal lengths as well as color. So it's the same thing with Sigma and Tokina as well. We work very hard to make sure that our lenses match. It's not always possible. Some focal lengths are just slightly warmer than the others for a number of reasons. But you're talking within Kelvin values that are totally manageable.
I was making that statement not as a negative on cinema lenses, but on photo lenses. It was because the cinema art came from the photo art lenses, which were actually already color matched across photo.
Right. Yeah.
Is what is what I was getting at.
Yeah, very, very, very. And I ran off to cinema again, but yeah, it's that's true. I don't know for sure if they were the first ones to do it, maybe, but yeah, they certainly were ahead of the curve on that one.
Robert says even VFX, a decent VFX soup and a second AC is better than paying extra for lens, but data, yeah, that's true, and probably cheaper sometimes. Yeah. Rob Eagle says, "Yo, fire!"
Was that? No, I think
Rob
that's
Eagle.
No, I think he's playing the. I don't know what he's doing. We
love
Rob.
That's flame. That's flame. Yes.
Buy some bright tangerine stuff, please.
Yes. We love bright tangerine. Always looks so good, and it's well built. Marky Chihuahua, I know who that is. Hello, boys. In the change the industry is seeing, what do manufacturers see for the future? What are you seeing in the future?
For lenses, or
with Hollywood obviously changing in many ways, how probably maybe go more generic, but how would our manufacturers planning for that? What kind of things are they looking at for where they're going? I guess.
I think most of them don't know. They're just kind of guessing. That's true of any industry. No slight on my competitors, but it's just like, come on, like you're just like, what are we doing here, friends? So I would say if you know that, you can make a lot of money, right? And that's true anywhere. But I would say that I think manufacturers that get it are the ones that lead, and the leaders get followed, right? So I think that manufacturers that are truly listening to their customers and truly paying attention to various trends are going to lead, and they're going to make quality products. You've seen that already, and then you've seen the what I call Me Too products. So yeah, I think the future, when nobody knows for sure, but the trends that I'm noticing are larger format. Again, we talked about that as far as what the reasoning behind that is. And obviously virtual production and the connection. And I think this is true anywhere. It's the connection of our real world to the fantasy that is cinema. And, why do we go to the movies? We go to the movies to
escape,
immerse ourselves in a different story, to escape. And so if you follow that, if you really get down to the core of what it is, that's what it is. Like, for example, Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola is not a beverage company. They're not. They're selling happiness, and that's what they're selling. They're selling an experience. And so it's the same. If you look at where manufacturers are going, what are they really selling? Are they aware of what they're selling? Are they aware of what they're actually making? They're making, like, Tokina is not a lens company. We just provide optics for, we currently provide vision, but our goal is our company tagline is, your art is cinematography, ours is technology. We're a technology company that happens to focus on that. But as times change, maybe we'll be making something else. So it's all about looking at the heart of it and figuring out what it is that's actually needed, not just the product to come up with the better follow focus or to come up with the better lens. It's more, how do we meet the needs of the storytellers and what they need, and within the POV of what's being made, camera wise and other things. So.
Right. Yep. It's be Curtis.
Brian wants Coke. I'm not sure which one.
Oh, he said Coke, yes. I don't know. Some sales have for gear have dropped off. Well, yes, yeah. People don't know what the future holds, and it's a thing.
Yeah, dumping of gear. I've got a lot of thoughts on that, but yeah, it's interesting to see what's happening there. So
Uh, I'm assuming this is the case, but Tokina, are they also in the industrial optics space as well?
Tokina is like an iceberg. Okay, there's a certain amount going on above the water, and there's a whole lot more going on underneath the water, and that's pretty much all I can say about that.
Gotcha. Okay.
The company is significantly larger under the water than it is above the water.
Gotcha. Okay. Fair enough. Because that's like something I think about with camera manufacturers is like, okay, you build this photo camera. Have you thought about making this photo camera do other things that the sensor can do that people, what have you? Yeah, let's see.
Yeah.
Okay, we got a multi-parter coming in from Feral Syntax. I got to wait for it all to come in. I've learned this one over the years. I'll start reading it. I'm like, there's no finish to the question. Then he puts the continued now for me. Let me think. Okay, there we go. We got all of it. All right. Okay, so trend in the industry: cameras and lenses need to match better. Canon cams are RF optimized, red now going Nikon optimized. Fujifilm Blackmagic lacks a partnership with a lens manufacturer. Blackmagic's new powerful Ursa 12K at 7K comes with outdated EF. Isn't maybe an opportunity there for a partnership between Blackmagic and Tokina? If Tokina is not interested, someone else could jump. If Blackmagic succeed in the camera camp, it could be a smart move for Tokina. Their lenses speak to their sensors, no other.
Yeah. Well, we talked about that already, which was more to reference of the correction that happens between the camera that's designed, the lens that's designed for the camera. The problem is that you cannot really design a lens specific to a sensor and then have it play well with other lenses, and that's the issue that you see. And Blackmagic, I'm fairly convinced most of their customers are shooting Russian lenses with weirdo adapters. Like I love Blackmagic shooters because you're always like, what weird thing did we do today? A, B, let's visit F, D, and E on the way. But yeah, it's really, honestly, I would say it's not that simple. There's too many factors to consider, too many different lenses. That's why I was saying earlier, kind of like the idea that Zeiss had with mapping the distortion of lenses with eye data. And that's really what's going to come in is how do we integrate that lens data, the distortion mapping, the shading, all that stuff that is in a lens data is possible to transmit in lens data to the camera. And that's where you're going to see that. But the problem is most manufacturers are not on that page, even though Cook has done a good job with their /I of trying to get everybody involved. Zeiss's data, their extended data, their XT data is significantly more in depth. So it really comes down to manufacturing. Can we make a lens that is able to be mapped and efficiently done in that way? And can the camera catch up to that? I think it's a better job for software. I think it's more likely better to see importing lens data into Resolve and dealing with it there versus putting it in an active sensor alignment situation or post light capture before you're into the converter situation. So.
What do you think, just opinion optically from yourself as marketing, sales, and thinker, the L mount out there for mirrorless? What do you think the success of that mount is or could be, or is it short-lived because it doesn't really have a home, or what do you think?
There's a lot of I don't know. Say it again. Sorry, one more time.
Refocus. Well, the L mount.
40 different. The L mount. Yeah, sorry. My brain went 40. I was thinking about GFX mount, and then I ended up on a. I do that. Sorry. I think it's standardization is really that's the big problem we have in general, right? We just have this problem with standardization. You have competing ideas. You've got Sony that just is in their own world,
We,
and they own like a
we
bunch
have
of.
camera companies that own lens companies, and that's where, I mean, Sony's going to market to themselves. They create Canon with RF. Everybody else is that they're making cameras but don't have lenses are going L. But can L really succeed, or is it just a meh? We'll see.
I think the question is, can RF succeed? Can E succeed? Can GFX? There are factors that may go there. I don't think. I think really, honestly, I think these mounts will probably exist tangent, alongside each other, and the reason being that it's about proprietary. Why do these manufacturers make proprietary mounts? Well, they want to sell their own lenses. They want to sell their own cameras. They're not interested in maybe they'll be like, hey, you're a Snuggie Bear, let's do it together, sort of thing, like with Leica and Panasonic, which is a long-standing cooperation anyway. But that's really, I think it's in our best interest to see a single mount, but it is very much not in the best interest of camera manufacturers to go to a single mount standard. So there you go.
You need
I
a
got a
Coke. What's a product?
the only drink that guests on Scott Balcom's podcast drink.
What product would you love to see in the near future made from you all or another company? What would you like to see made?
Well, I'm not entirely. I don't profess to be entirely clairvoyant, but I've been correct about a number of things in the industry. So I would say things that I want to see, I'm currently working on that I'm not really interested in talking about. But I will say, in general, I would love to see. I'd love to see more, like what we were just talking about. I would love to see more inclusion of everybody, kind of, all the products more working together and people really thinking about that.
Standardization on certain parts.
We have such a fragmented ridiculousness going on that, companies that I know that make like really niche stuff. And it's like, that probably shouldn't exist, but it does, and good for them. But I would say I would love to see more cooperation among all the manufacturers, because my experience dealing with my colleagues at other manufacturers, there's really only two schools of thought. There's people that, in my opinion, get it, which is we're all doing something here, and we're all serving you, the director of photography or the customer. But there's other ones that don't see it that way. They see it as like mine, and competitive and like unnecessarily so. So I wish. Yeah, I would wish that we would just see more cooperation in general among all of the manufacturers. But again, I think those are competing interests and may ultimately, much like certain social ideas, it's a great idea, but ultimately doesn't necessarily work out. So
I've got a two-parter question, but I'm only going to ask you the first part so your ADHD doesn't get the best of you here. Weird lenses out there. What are some of the coolest lenses that you've seen out there that just speak to you in just such a strange way that you really admire?
Well, I would say that I modeled the Vista C after a few of those, or we did. My suggestion, but I would say I certainly love the Cookspeed Pancro for a number of reasons. I think that's just a wonderful lens, wonderful set of lenses. I am personally a huge fan of Pentax lenses. I have a significant collection of Pentax lenses, and I love Pentax. It was my first camera, and I just love the look of those lenses. So any of the Pentax stuff, to a certain lesser extent, the Konica lenses. So that kind of stuff that's more off the cart path, I also, like all the FDs have been bought up, and so have all the other, all these buzzy lenses that everybody wanted, or at least were well promoted. Those ones have all kind of been bought up. So we're automatically kind of scraping, I wouldn't say the bottom of the barrel, but we're at a different layer of the barrel now. And so we're fishing through that. So yeah, I really love the Pentax Takumar stuff, and the vintage Cook stuff, of course, and yeah. So
no tilt shift anamorphics coming. Is that what you're saying? No, you don't admire that.
Yeah,
that was a fun conversation.
Yeah.
And I guess then you probably answered it in your first statement. What old lens is out there right now that needs to be reimagined today? And I guess that's the Vista C.
No, that's good. We tried to do that. I think we did, actually. But Gosh, I don't know. The problem, not a problem, but the cool thing is, I would say it's a cool thing. The cool thing is that you have companies like GL Optics and TLS and TK Lenses and whoever else that are, and to a lesser extent, Iron Glass, because they're more, a little bit, I view them a little bit more progressively. But ultimately, like, you've got these companies that are taking a lot of these lenses and doing things to them. So I think that's kind of where it landed. I don't know if there's enough people out there to buy all that stuff. I feel like the vintage lenses kind of meet that demand. And the closest thing you're going to get is someone who models those lenses, in a modern optic, which is what we did, and I'm sure you'll see other people doing it, understanding exactly what is needed. Oh, I want me
Phil,
to talk about Cine Xenars. That was the beginning of my career.
yeah,
So,
Phil really wants some more options in that set. He's acquired them
actually,
all, I guess.
you will find this. There is a common thread, and it's no mistake. There is a common thread between the Cine Alta, the Sony Primes, the Super 35 ones, the Schneider Cine Xenars, the Tokina Vistas, the Airy Signatures. All of those have a common thread. They all kind of have a similar sort of mojo to them, and with differences. But that's really where it is. So the Cine Xenars, I started my career, they relatively early in my career. Uh, they showed up at NAB 2009, I think, or eight. No, it was seven. I don't even know. It was a long time ago. And Schneider had this lens, this machine vision lens, and they were like, "Oh, we're going to sell these for Red One," because Red One was brand new. Must have been 2007. And they came back months later with this lens, and they were like, "Here it is, ta-da!" And it telescoped, and it was the Cine Xenar One, and actually nice lenses. I think there were less than 20 sets made. I could be wrong about that number. Not very many. It was not successful. Then they redesigned it into the Mark II, where they literally changed a couple of small features and doubled the price. And then they made the Cine Xenar 3s, which was a project that I was heavily involved in, and Phil was, and that's how I met Phil, actually. And so the Cine Xenar 3s are a proper housing, very underestimated lenses, wonderful Super 35 lenses. And it's not just because I was involved in it. It stands down time, and part of the design aesthetic of the Vistas and the Signature Primes and a few others, it definitely had a heart with the Cine Xenars.
Is that the one with like there's only 5 copies of the 18 out there,
This is
or was that
14.
14?
14.
14, yeah.
They made the 14 right before I left the company, or around the time I left, and they only made like 3 or 4 of them. And actually, Schneider was intending to make those into anamorphic lenses, I believe, but then ultimately it never happened.
I
So
think Phil owns 3 or 4 of them, and he's not going to be happy till he has them all in his collection. I think
I think he has all of them. I don't know.
Phil's like, there's that one. Speaking of software, have you ever thought about putting out an app that emulates lenses in your lineup to give users a taste of what they could get, similar to Leica Lux app, using iPhone camera but applying the Leica Lux? That's interesting.
Well, the Leica, I have that app, and it just basically punches up the contrast. And there's only so many things you can do to overlay on an image, so you're not going to be able to replicate that
You
that
can't pull
field
something out; you can only
that
put something on.
separation. You're just putting a mask over the image. So, and for certain effects, that certainly works. We get into this discussion with diffusion filters, with Scatter. It's exceptional software. It's really cool. If you haven't seen Scatter, check it out. I mean, it's able to like emulate certain looks, but it's still not able to do it in that kind of 3-dimensional quality because it's not happening in the optics. So really, there isn't much of a look you could apply that you couldn't already buy in some type of LUT pack somewhere along the line from somebody. Um, so it's a LUT really.
It's a lot, but have you played with Mr. Filter yourself? That software. I'm trying to forget the brand. There's a plugin that emulates filters.
Scatter is one of
Scatter.
them.
Yes. Have you played with that? What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely, yeah. And I interviewed the owner for our upcoming book. Like it's very interesting. It's able to apply a certain level of resolution and contrast modification, and it's modeled. What's different about that software is it's modeled after actual shooting of it, and it handles a lot of things well. It doesn't do everything that a traditional diffusion filter can do. So yeah, and I've been approached by multiple manufacturers, and I've seen efforts to model the filters over the years. We documented all of them at Schneider for that exact purpose at one point, but of course it never, obviously didn't go anywhere. But yeah, I think that that's those plugins are about as good as they're going to get. There's no technology jump that's going to make them better. Ultimately, it's just like with polarizers or ND or whatever. You can't add what's not there. So that contrast you can affect, yes, but distortion
annihilation you can kind of affect. You can.
I mean, you could in theory model it, and of course there are, never say never, and probably 6 months from now we'll be talking about how wrong I was about it. But like, it'd be a pretty complex calculation and dynamic to be able to emulate some of these looks, and ultimately still you're just putting masks on the image and altering it. It's not what's actually captured there. So yeah,
that's fair enough. I mean, I played with it a bit and thought it was interesting. I had several filters that it would emulate, and I tested them side by side, and they were close. They weren't perfect, but I mean, I guess if you didn't add them, you didn't get it in camera, and you wanted some of that effect in post, it'd be a way to get it back.
Well, I mean, emulation of diffusion filters in post is absolutely nothing new. I mean, high-end colorists know all the tricks to do that. Before these softwares kind of canned that. And there are certain shots where you just can't use a diffusion filter, but you need diffusion in post. So it all has an application. People that comment like, I'm throwing away all my diffusion filters because I have this software. Well, depending on the type of work you do, that could work well. But there are certainly cases, it's always been the case, where the DP wants control at a certain level, because on some higher end productions, you don't know the colorist, you're never going to see them. You're hired to shoot a film, and whatever they do with your footage has got to be okay with you. So a lot of times the in-camera diffusion, besides having a certain semi-indefinable 3D look to it, dimensionality to it, especially with the way it handles highlights, that's important and can't really be replicated. Is it something that people appreciate or willing to do outside of control? I don't know. But, yeah, the case to buy a black Pro Mist and always have it on your camera is becoming more limited. But some of the other diffusion options, again, with specular highlights in particular, are important. So.
Art, hello, Art. Bought a Revarsity Rota tray and sent a text question on Saturday. Was impressed by a timely return call from technical support from none other than Ryan Avery. The guy's a rock star with a wealth of knowledge, and that's why we love him and have him on here.
Thank you. That is true. If you contact Revarsity, you will get me. I don't take sick days. I don't take vacations. I don't celebrate major holidays. I just sit there and text you back. So if you buy something, you're going to get me, and I'm going to answer it.
So, be prepared. There's a pretty significant jump from Black Super Mist 1/16 to Black Super Mist 1/8. How does scarf dust compare to where does it land?
Well, scarf dust is a different type of diffusion material. It's in the same family, but it can be a little bit stronger and get away with it. I had so when I made scarf dust, honestly, it was a joke. Like, it was a good filter, but I was like, what if we just named it silly? Because my problem with marketing filter companies in general is they do a really bad job of marketing themselves, and they don't really explain, and nobody knows what's going on. And I'm convinced in some cases they don't know. But like, it's the scarf dust is a quarter, and I really wanted to have one filter because in my experience, everybody buys an eighth or a quarter. And I figured, well, we're going for a little bit heavier look here, so scarf dust is a quarter. I have entertained making an eighth. I don't really want to do it. I've done it on a custom level, and then what do you call it? An ascot? I really don't know. Half scarf. But yeah, it's a quarter, as is the PA tiers. The latest diffusion filter that's coming is an eighth, more specifically because of the way it interacts with light, that we prefer that subtlety. So.
And if you go to revarsity.com and you use coupon code Scott Balcom, all one word, you get 20% off. So just put that in your little pack of savings later.
And then everybody that bought last week is like, wait a minute.
They'll text you and you'll text them back.
Thanks, Scott. No, I'm kidding.
You're welcome. Anything I can do to take money from your pocket and put it in someone else.
Oh, it's not purely.
Tokina Type C question. According to the new shooter info, your favorite, the lens's coverage is bigger than a Lexus 65. Yeah, talk about that again with the lights, the illumination circle for me to.
Right. So it is larger, depends on the focal length. To get larger than 65, you have to go up to the 50 millimeter, just barely covering. And again, this is open gate. This is like what people master in on 65. The deliverable is not open gate, so the image is getting cropped anyway. But yeah, the 50 and up will go bigger than that, although it's kind of a moot point. So yeah, that's the coverage on those lenses. The angle towards talking about that is because most people do not have any idea that the lenses cover bigger than VistaVision, because all Tokina has talked about to date is the area of definition. Yeah, area of definition versus illumination. And now, even though it's against our optical designer's religion, we are talking about illumination circle, because he's like, I designed it for that format, and we're like, yes, but people use bigger. So
that's right. You could also use the word "and." There's an image circle, area of definition, and there's an illumination circle.
So to comment about shooting on mini LF, the reason that we shot on that honestly was accessibility. It is nigh to impossible to get your hands on a 265 right now. The 17K is not really available yet. The Fuji camera is not available. And so shooting on an OG 65, which, believe it or not, those things are still out on jobs working. So it's actually very difficult to do. So the mini LF was a choice, and they chose to shoot it in deliver it in 4:3 because they wanted to show the height of the image, and it better shows the image circle than in 16:9 or whatever crop delivery. So.
Do you foresee a future where we have AI done in camera to modify the look? Otherwise, a lens would a look that a lens can't deliver. In other words, do you foresee optically perfect lenses that have no character and all character is added in AI in camera? I guess would be.
I think that's kind of what we're talking about with optical correction with the cameras already. To imply artificial intelligence would be to imply some type of input that would data that would provide that. So you would have to have different data profiles loaded. Even so, these looks are directly related to physical optics and the way the light interacts. So I'm not going to say no. It's just like with diffusion filters, you could have said there's no way 30 years ago, there's no way there's going to be a software that's going to replace what my Harrison does. Well, there is to a certain extent. It's not totally foolproof, but yeah. So I would say, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Like lens flaring, if a light is out of the visual plane, how would AI know there is a light out there creating a flare?
Well, it would infer it, or reference the data set would reference some kind of previous flares. It's entirely possible. Who knows? But I mean, one thing's for sure, we are definitely, that is what makes you guys artists is you're applying tools in a certain way. It's like, why draw with certain oils when you could just draw on the iPad? It's kind of the same thing. So
I've often advocated or figured that where we would end up with is you get a sensor that has exceptional dynamic range, and then you just basically load virtual cameras into the camera, and it emulates, oh, this is what a Sony Venice 2 would look like, or this is what how it draws. That's kind of where I thought it would end up going, and I don't think we have the sensors yet to be able to even get there.
Yeah, every single technology advancement in the history of time has been about speed and convenience. So if you take that viewpoint, apply it to what we're talking about, it's all about speed and convenience, which in this case comes down to data. Really, anybody that's talking about AI is really talking about data. What is your base set of data? What are we doing with that data? How good is that data? And so that's the thing. So to trace what's going to happen with that, you have to trace where the data is coming from, which is lens communication and understanding where the camera is in physical space and that sort of thing.
Curtis says his 1.8 black is too strong. Is it a brand? Oh, yeah.
Black Super Mist. It's a format filter, which is basically a copy of the Schneider Black Frost or the Tiffin Black Pro Mist. It's a black mist filter. Yeah, filter manufacturing, especially on weaker strengths, is really really hard. I think I made or offered a 1/32 to you. I think I don't know, but it's really hard. You could imagine just spraying some mist in the air and just it's like that. It's like
The perfume.
it's
Just
like
gonna
that
waft it.
that Portlandia skit with like the Battle of the Whisper Bands or whatever. It's like how light can we go? Light diffusion is very hard to do. So
Now that song's gonna be stuck in my head. Let's see, Fearless Index multi-part question. I assume sooner or later we will have a prime level performing, small sized, and relatively affordable city zoom that will replace having several primes out in our bag. I think I know where your answer is going to go on this. Do you see a trend coming? Is Tokina working on that? Here I'm not considering situations where you need faster speeds, faster than 2.0, where primes make sense.
well, isn't Nikon kind of already doing that with their new f4
28 to 30 or 135?
or 20 to 135? Yeah, those, and Sony had theirs. I mean, you've kind of already seen it. The photo lenses exist. That's about as cool as it's going to get in small zoom lenses. So I don't think so. It's there again. There's no free lunch in optics. You've got competing ideas of big stuff where light has a chance to dance around, and you can do different things with it that create that dimensionality to an image that we love. And if you're putting lenses elements super close together and a whole bunch of them, there's just really nowhere for it to go, and so it kind of ends up looking like it already does. So I don't think you're going to see any performance differences. Everybody's looking for that. Everybody's looking for the 12x zoom that's 12 to 120. That's XYZ that does everything, and that's really going to there's going to have to be some intersection of post production and the lenses, but ultimately you can't put what's not there, and so that's going to be really tough. And you've already seen Sarui's doing that with their primes. They got some nice little lightweight, very inexpensive primes, so there's stuff like that. But
Are you looking around here? What are you? And it's C-Ray. I got the actual C-Ray. Yeah, C-Ray made complete sense to me, and he's like, C-Ray. I'm like, I don't see that. I really don't see that.
Well, it's like with Make a Mike. I asked them, and they're like, yeah, either way.
Yeah, whatever makes you happy. No, that's not how this works.
Especially considering this is coming from a language that is heavily tone dependent.
Right. Yeah, those are the C-Ray VP1s.
So you probably see something like that. Yeah.
Pretty interesting lenses. I was kind of a little shocked.
The Laowa Ranger is, those are nice little zooms too. So
the Rangers are really cool. I enjoyed those. Yeah, the sharpness edge to edge just blew me away. It was, and for a $599 lens, full frame, incredible. Pyrex.
Yeah, and it's a specific look, right? So it's which will check a lot of boxes for a lot of people, but other people won't check any boxes whatsoever. So.
Yeah, I call it very much kind of a Sigma light. It's kind of a very little character. Wide open has a little bit, and then it kind of goes away, and it just goes to sharp with contrast, and that's it. That's his thing. Yeah. Sorry, my dog is clicking. He likes to walk around at this time. In fact, I'm waiting. Tokina one day makes the smallest 2.0 to 2.8 lens like Athena. A small lens, okay.
Outlook. What do we say? What does the Magic 8 Ball say? I would say.
Does not look.
I would say this: the cameras are getting smaller, and people have an appetite for smaller setups. So I think it's highly logical that a mini Vista would be something that would be desired by a lot of people.
I mean, I have one around here. It goes with my little Raptor, V Raptor. It's a little tiny little guy.
Oh yeah.
Are there still any of those available?
This is the bare metal.
Oh wow, that's one of the.
Yeah,
I love that.
remains the stupidest thing I ever did.
No,
But
no, it worked.
no, it was fun and it's great for people that appreciate it. But
Yeah,
it's,
yeah. But
there are still
my
a few.
favorite part of that was when Jared saw somebody hollowed it out and put the GoPro inside.
Yeah, yeah, that was my friend Colton. He did that.
Yeah, and Jared was like, "What?"
Well, actually, originally that's what I wanted to do, but Jared so kindly pointed out that that would then be a red camera, and that would not be
Right.
good.
With yeah, you can't do that. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Art says everyone should buy a couple of Revar 4 by 6.5 filter cartridge hard. Oh, I like those too. Yes, those are good.
Yeah, if
Like
you
these
don't
are,
know, that's a Pelican case for your 4x5 filters.
and I would literally bring it out, but it's literally in a crate right now. Everything being packed up.
Oh,
It's
it's I got some over there, but it's we've got a ridiculous number of patents on that case. Actually, it's pretty.
it's a good case and it's very affordable. I mean,
Yeah,
you think
yeah,
about filters, that's expensive.
yeah.
Protecting your filters cheap.
It doesn't make them drop proof. You know it could potentially still break if you drop it, but it's great for organizing in the case and certainly crushing filters and yeah, all that stuff.
Well, and it's the edges that always get the ding. Somebody just happens to tap an edge, and there's your
Well, also
dent.
fingerprints, I mean, almost all the rental companies they put little tags of Kim wipes so you don't grab the filter, and I was like, well, this design allows you to grab it cleanly, and there's no chance of it rubbing on any dirt or anything. Uh, the most over-engineered thing you can imagine, probably, but it's great, and it takes up like half the space of a regular pouch. So yeah,
It's a very good point, Art. Yes, I always I forget how many things Ryan has had his hands on over the years. It's so many. How does Ryan feel about Zeiss bringing back Otis to mirrorless with the Otis ML?
uh, I wish Zeiss as much luck and fortune as they can get together, and I think that that would be smart. But I don't know price points. Um, Zeiss and a lot of the higher end manufacturers have some significant challenges on their hands, considering pricing and features and everything. They really have to bring a very high quality, which they do, but they have to bring a very high quality product and explain it well to people. So I would like to see that, but yeah, we'll see. I think they kind of had a choice between that and the nano primes, and they kind of rolled with that. So yeah, but yeah, of course, more lenses. Why not?
I think yeah. Okay, Mino is saying he wants a very compact zoom, not a large one. A longer,
Again,
lighter, like the Ranger Super 35
already
light.
exists. Yeah,
Yeah,
just go buy that. Like that already exists. There's no better small zoom to have. Like
that
that's been
yeah those
done.
especially those little Super 35s. Those things are cute.
They're cool. Yeah, they're really cool.
Really nice image too.
I love Lau is up to some really cool stuff. I've
Yeah,
always liked what they do.
yeah. Cries for Mini Vista so badly.
That is the desire of many people.
That's so cute. Me too. Mini Vistas. Yeah, yeah. Let's see. Baxter says, why do companies have no mid-range pro lenses? It's more difficult to see the difference in price for me since lenses jump from 300 to 1300 all the way up to 12K. Oh, interesting. But
Well, the Sigma primes sit in that mid range. The original Vista primes sit in that mid range. But a lot of what you have to consider the timing in which these products were released. That's the most important thing. It's easy to look at it now and go like, oh, there's no mid range. Well, when Sigma launched their thing, they were kind of not the low end, but close to it, and Tokina was just slightly price wise above that. But you take two lenses that have the same specs. It's easy to scroll through B&H and go like, oh yeah, well here's a T1.5 lens and here's a T, like for example the Irix versus the Sigmas versus the Vistas. There's a classic example of lenses that look very, very similar on paper and could not be any more different. So it's really about the look that they generate. But as far as pricing in the middle, it's kind of like, well, what features are you really going to bring for a higher price? So the Vistas bring huge image circle and all this other stuff for around 5-6 grand. The Sigmas have incredible resolution and standardized, everything, which is beautiful. But what value are you going to add? And the Vespids didn't exist when those came out. The Arliss, that's new. The even Laowa had their limited options at the time. So it's really about point of view. But yeah, in the middle now, it's harder. It's harder to make a lens that's really going to give you something that much different than what the lower end lenses do, unless you go a direction like Tokina did or Sigma or whoever. So.
And yeah, that's kind of like 6,000 to 8,000. Yeah. Well, that's Tokina, right?
Yeah.
I mean, in a lot of ways, yep.
It's no mistake. You're providing a certain level. So.
Arts like Mini Vista would be dope.
Yeah, and then you guys will be like, it's too expensive.
You have to. What would you call it though? Yeah, right. It'll be these are $8,000. Then you got the Mini. You got a Vista, which is huge, and then you got the Mini. What's the opposite of huge? What kind of cool name would you have to come up with?
That's my job.
You've already got it. I guarantee it.
I named Vista, and I'm super happy I did because they were called ATX primes at the time, and I was like, "That's not going to work."
No, Vista is awesome. Yeah, Vista literally has name recognition. You say a Vista, people know exactly what lens it is. They're like, "I don't have those." Will we maybe one day see a Tokina rocket lens, the perfect lens for filming? Oh, yeah.
It already exists. The 180 millimeter Vista at T1.9 it's been purchased by astrophotography people, and it's been used to film a few SpaceX things. It's not a particularly long lens, but the resolution is insane. And if you're, depending on what delivery you're shooting for, resolution wise in extenders, you can get a very good image out of it. So that's bigger lenses though. That's Canon, Nikon's bag with a big 1200 millimeters.
I need like 1,000 millimeter for Wednesday.
That's 180 with an 8 times, 7 times expander.
Is there such a thing? I've never. I guess you can stack them, but I'm not sure how well that would work. There's another Starship launch next Wednesday that I'll be filming, and they're so addictive. You get sometime in your life, and I'm sure you will get to at some point. You've got to witness it in person. One of those launches.
Oh, I've seen them. Yeah.
No, I mean the rumble, like in live.
Yeah.
Oh, you went?
Yeah.
To Starship?
Yeah, it's incredible. It's absolutely amazing. It's just like, and my house too here in California. Like you see those things. It's not what you're talking about, but you see the
but that is the tiny little rocket. I'm talking about the big
one. I know. Yeah, the heavy. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, it's huge. You see. Barking Chihuahua says, I need another BSM filter cases. Put in your order. What's your opinion on the Irix look, and what is that look?
I think you are better suited to comment on that, Scott. It's an interesting lens. It's an interesting series. It has a good image quality. It has definitely a look that's kind of betweensy, I guess. Between kind of like I don't know how you would describe it, Scott, but that's my feeling. I do like the fact that they have data in there. They are similar manufacturing style and possibly the same place as the Zeiss, the Cosina lenses, the photo lenses. So they're a photo lens that's made. It's like a hybrid lens, I guess, mechanically, optically. I don't know. What do you think, Scott?
I like the lenses. I think they are a extraordinary value. They're quite sharp. They're weird that they came from the outsides working their way in and not really like building a traditional set of focal lengths. There's one weird thing about it that I found, and now I can't unsee it. And I'm not even sure how it happened. But in like light balls behind me, there is a swirl in every one of those orbs. I don't even know how that happens. How do you make a as literal as a I don't know.
That's tooling marks. So the glass is cut to whatever shape it is that they want, and the tooling marks that actually carve it, leave it, and you can see it in the bokeh Vista primes where it's like what they call onion skinning, which is true of a lot of lenses, and it has to do with the manufacturing of it. If lenses were much smaller, we could do molded optics, but you have to have very, very small elements. So large A spheres and large elements are always machined glass, and in that case, there's a tool that does it, and it leaves behind a pattern, and that's the pattern that that particular tool left behind.
Interesting. That's like the big oddity that I see on it, and it's not that apparent, but I mean for me it is now because I can't ever unsee anything. Like somebody ruined the Schneider Xenons for me because like, would you see that CA? I do now. I do.
That was the second lens project I was ever involved in, and it's a reboot of a design from the 50s, and it's got all of the things that come with that. And it's got, it's basically their T3 lenses. They're pretty much not very well usable above that, but still a great value, and they were fairly revolutionary at the time.
Mm. Seriously grateful for the 180 millimeter incredible lens. Yeah.
It is now it's a T1.9, but remember the F number is relative to the focal length, so it's actually an F1.2 lens. So you're talking about an F1.2 lens with an image circle much bigger than 60 millimeters that doesn't breathe whatsoever and has nearly zero CA, and it literally, telephotos are easy to design, relatively easy to design well. So when you over design in a telephoto, it's an incredible thing. So that is a feat of optical engineering. Too bad it's $19,000, but yeah. So
let's see here. Okay. What things did we not talk about that you want to talk about? And because I don't want to take up a whole evening of you, but I mean,
no,
questions.
I think we touched on probably my biggest gripe of the adapter shim thing. So go buy a shimmable adapter, please, and stop emailing me about it. And otherwise, I don't know. I'm just excited. I'm excited for the future. I know for a fact, at least on the high end, we're starting to see a pretty significant recovery in production right now. Significant large number of studios are at full capacity or near it, or plans to be. So I'm excited to see what exits from this. And honestly, in any situation, if you're still here, if you're still in this industry at this point, you're here. And so you're going to reap the benefits of that, I think, soon. So I would just encourage everybody to be mindful that things are getting better. They are going to get better. There is no up without down. And so fortunately, we can't go much more down. So there's lots of up to look forward to.
Yeah, when you're at the bottom, the only thing you can do is go up.
Right.
Are most of those productions in the studios, are they like television style?
Features, large features,
Okay.
stuff that requires longer production cycle.
Okay.
And the shows, I mean, what we saw with the strikes was we saw a balancing of the books. Unfortunately, while everybody was out fighting for the rights to fair pay and all of that, which you should get, unfortunately, the studios took their time to balance the budget and they cut out a lot of production. And now people have burned through a lot of that content. I mean, like I'm already seeing it where it's like, oh, what the heck do I watch? Because I've seen that. So they're getting back to it, to production on a certain level. So.
You got to watch Severed.
Yeah.
And then whatchamacallit, Reacher season 3 just came out yesterday. It's
nice.
Good.
I enjoyed a little disturbing, but I like stuff like that. I enjoyed Baby Reindeer. That was a really good one.
I've seen that one.
Yeah, you should watch it. It's creepy.
I like creepy.
Yeah, well done. But yeah, there's a bunch of stuff, but ultimately we're kind of running out of content, and I think you saw a significant increase in the amount of content that was made following the pandemic, and now the library built up, and now it's a little bit depleted, and so we're back to it. And I think the fears of AI are significantly unfounded, at least at the moment. There's always a gap in what producers understand and what actually is happening.
Right. I still have not seen that video that everybody would say, oh my God, it's all over. They all post it. They all say it's over. And I'm looking at it going, that ain't anything. That is not Not worried
Uh-huh.
about that.
I mean, it's changing quickly. It's going to change. It'll be here. But like, I was shown something recently of a person who was extremely proud of it. And they were like, look what I got it to do. And I was like, yeah, but the model's hair isn't moving and
Yeah.
this isn't happening. Now for the average
It just
person, they're
moves
not
like a
going to,
Lego.
the average person, I mean, there was a lot of movements, but it wasn't, it's getting better. But ultimately we're going to find, like technology always does, it supports us in a different way, and people have to go find new things to do, and they will. Or we'll all be just sitting around on universal income. One way or another, we're going to get there.
But
So,
my favorite test of AI photo creation or video creation is have it create something and then tell it to put a cigar in its mouth. And I swear to you, there's like cigars up here. There's like cigars sideways. It has no idea. And I still have to laugh. I tried the
it'll get
most
there.
powerful one available yesterday.
Yeah.
Cigar like
It'll
here.
it'll get there, but in the near term, whatever the near term is defined as, we are seeing and going to see that producers are going to realize that they can't get away with what they think they can get away with,
Right.
and we are starting to see that lack of content, and so yeah, so that's kind of where we're headed, and I'm excited for it.
Yeah, I think continuity is one of the biggest problems I've seen with AI. It not only this scene to this scene, things not changing. How do you keep it from changing certain things? But literally from this frame to this frame, something changes. All of a sudden, the teeth got sharper, or it's such weird things, and those are things that humans will pick up because we are face driven. We communicate based on the way we look at people.
There is no better pattern recognition tool than the human mind. Like, we can see patterns. That's why you can look at something and see one tiny little problem, because your brain is evolutionarily developed to do that. So that's going to be the challenge. Again, it's all about data. I really am a big believer in, I apply AI in my business practices, and it's all about the data. It's all about the underlying data. And so are we going to be data collectors, or are we going to somehow make this a tool that we can guide that data? And I believe it's a combination of both, but certainly we are going to be seeing sophistication with this. So
I mean, I think we pulled it off. I don't think anybody realized you're just an AI generated person.
exactly, yeah, I'm on the beach somewhere.
Max Headroom over there. Just realized this is live. Yes, this is very live.
Yeah.
Don't let the little live signs fool you. Anything else you want to throw out there? Anything? I know you want to get home and see your family and eat some food and all that
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah, it's getting late here on the West Coast, but yeah, I appreciate the opportunity. I appreciate everybody's questions, and
Always
I
happy
will
to
be
have you.
wandering at NAB as usual. So if you see me, stop me and say hello. And otherwise, looking forward to the coming year and everything, and keep making cool stuff. And I can't make cool stuff without you guys telling me. So most of the guys I recognize in here, it's a community effort, and I'm eternally grateful for everyone's input, and will continue to aggressively seek it. So if you have an idea, let me know.
Very, very cool. And you can see Tokina Cinema USA, revarscine.com. What's the format? What's the
Format High Tech USA.
Yeah, format high tech. I always want to say high crest, but high tech.
Yeah.
Firecrest, high tech. Yeah, are places to reach him. And if you happen to text him on Revarscine, you're going to get him. Ryan, thank you so much for joining. As usual, you're always a wealth of knowledge, and optically, you see things that we don't see, and I appreciate that. Yeah, I'm gonna drop you down, and I'll come right back to you real quick.
Okay.
All right, thank you, sir. Thank you, everyone, for joining the live. We really do appreciate Ryan Avery for his time and his expertise. And so please feel free, go check out Tokina Cinema lenses. They're pretty cool. I've definitely been in love with those for years. And then revarscity.com. Also great for all the things that his ADHD allows him to do. So thank you all for joining. Go have some fun this weekend. Eat something delicious, and you can become a channel member if you want to support. It's really good stuff. And as always, as I like to leave it, don't let your passions center around your life. Let your life center around your passions. Thanks, everybody. Bye.